he streamed this live on Twitch.
I did.
And so this is the first podcast that has been streamed live. So if it's a VOD there, hello, welcome to this week's video. So technical difficulties, if you could not already tell by the introduction, Matt was not able to get his live stream posted as a VOD on his Twitch channel. Last week, it was only the very end of the discussion and after we had turned off the cameras for the official recording, but this week's is actually the unedited or mostly unedited version of our discussion before we started the recording, as well as the entire discussion itself. I did cut it off at the end of the recording because it's just an overlap with last week's video. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoy. And sorry for the technical difficulties. Show must go on. And so I'm posting that as this week's video, and we'll resume again next week with another discussion. And so this is the unedited and behind the scenes continuation of my discussion with Matt Jordan. And it is a little bit longer. It's pre-editing, but it was also a little bit longer discussion. I believe the entire live stream we're recording was about 3.5 hours. It's not that entire thing. And so just remember, definitely go check out Matt Jordan on his Twitch channel. He can be found on there at PushxClimax, and definitely check out his live streams if you like the kind of content that we had talked about on the podcast and you want to hear more from him. Just remember to leave a comment down below in the comment section, as we would love to hear your feedback. If there's anything you like, didn't like, agreed with, disagreed with about the discussion, we would love to have that conversation continued down below in the comment section. We here at Free to Speak and Think podcast do really want your voice to be heard as well, and to encourage open and free civil discussion, and for people to share their unique opinions, perspectives, and set of experiences. And so definitely feel free to drop a comment in the comment section down below. We will respond to as many of those as we are able. Leave a like if you like the video or the discussion, or if you want to see more like it, or if you like the idea of this podcast. It definitely helps out our channel. And remember that subscribing on YouTube is always free. We also have a Facebook page, FST Podcast. That is where we drop posts of updates for the channel, as well as FST Podcast, FST Free to Speak and Think on TikTok. Go ahead and check that out. It's full of a bunch of shorter videos that are much more digestible for people who might have shorter attention spans. So about maybe 10 seconds to a minute long of highlights from these videos. The first day we posted on there, we got about 2,200 views. And so people like the content. If you search FST Podcast, it should come up. Also note that we are looking to come to audio only podcasts soon. So whether it be Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we are looking to get that started here, hopefully in the next couple months. There are a couple things that we're waiting on just before we start posting on there. We want it to be ordered in a way that the first video is an introduction or a manifesto of the podcast itself, why I started it, what I hope to accomplish, and an introduction for people who might not know about the podcast, and then maybe not necessarily chronologically in the order that we had recorded the podcast. That's currently how we're posting our videos on YouTube. I want the audio only available for you guys so that you don't have to have the paid version for YouTube so you can listen to videos in the background. That is coming soon. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right into my discussion with Matt Jordan, the full version, mostly unedited. It is a little bit longer, so stay tuned. There's a lot of value here. We go over a handful of topics, especially one of the biggest ones was public school system and how we could improve that in America specifically. And so sit back, relax, maybe get some popcorn, and let's get right into this week's video.
Real quick, chat. Yeah. I am not reading chat. I will be minimizing you guys. Feel free to stay in chat, enjoy the podcast, but I will personally not be reading chat during this. This is just kind of a one-on-one with me in sports. I don't want you guys, actually, I wouldn't say I wouldn't want you guys' input, but this is my personal view and stuff, and I want to just kind of bounce off of him instead of reading chat. So I will be minimizing you guys for this podcast, but feel free to stay tuned, enjoy the unedited version. You could also feel free to watch the edited version at Sports' YouTube channel at FTS, Free to Speak, right?
Well, it's Free to Speak and Think. So Free Speak Think are the FST.
Free Speak Think.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I didn't want to put all the letters there. It didn't like yeah.
Makes sense.
Sound good off the tongue, you know?
But FTS podcast on YouTube, great
FST.
channels. He has FT.
No,
You
I
guys
took
get what
so
I'm
long
saying.
on the
I
name
will
to try to make it like easier, but oh man.
just listen
Yeah,
to sports. Sports will probably he has free reign to post it in chat at any time,
Oh,
etc.
okay.
He's already got free. He's already got 2 episodes already posted on his YouTube. I'm sure more will come,
Oh yeah, every
etc.
Monday. For
Every
sure.
Monday. Well,
Yeah.
today is Friday, so
Every
we're a
every
little.
Monday that's posted. Yeah.
Oh,
A
every
new
Monday is
video is posted
posted.
to the
Gotcha.
YouTube channel.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes more
I'm trying to
sense.
be consistent and not just post them immediately so that I can have a backlog in case, say, like I have surgery on Monday because I'm having surgery on Monday.
Makes sense.
So just
All
to
right.
like take the pressure off. Where
Bye,
is
chat.
your chat? I'm trying to drop a. Oh,
Feel
got
free
it.
to, have chat on your video if you want, but
Yeah.
that's up to you.
So I will say that everything that's
Sure.
here is, of course, public dialogue. So I would encourage viewers, if you're watching this either live or if you're watching this in the edited version, definitely comment or feel free to talk about it later. This whole podcast is about encouraging discussion and sharing perspectives, ideas, opinions, and potential, so that we can hopefully find potential solutions that or find common ground with each other. So we can eliminate division. I don't think that division is good for society in general. I think that different perspectives and each person embracing the fact that they're unique is good. So differences between people, but division specifically, I don't believe leads to a unified or productive society in general. But anyway, we'll get into that later. But go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I would say that the biggest part of it about discussion is having civil discussions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, nobody should be raising voices, yelling at someone just because they disagree. Everyone has their own opinion.
Yeah. Exactly. So I don't know how much the lag will come into play. If I like hear something you say differently, I'm not meaning to like speak over you or interrupt you. So feel free to cut me off anytime. Like I can go on rants. So I want this episode to. Okay, cool. I want this episode to highlight you and your perspective and opinions. I'm in every episode. So I'll have plenty of other opportunities to talk. So if you really want to like butt in or cut in or say something about something I said before I move on to a new topic, totally feel free to do that.
Not one to butt in, but
well,
I'll let you speak.
Again,
yeah, it's all about civil discussions. That's at least my perspective of it.
I mean,
always
healthy
one
discussion
for
could still be
healthy discussion.
Yeah. Interruptions aren't always an unhealthy thing.
I need to mute that. Liver, thank you for the sub. I need to mute that real quick. Chat, I will be muting subs and stuff like that. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. I don't know if that's going to come through on the OBS streaming specifically. If you're not if you're not recording what is on Twitch platform itself, if it may not be what's recorded on the OBS capture of your hardware itself, if that makes sense. Because it may be going through a different system that's not then, but it is Streamlabs. So
it is Streamlabs. So okay.
No, you're right. Yeah, I know that there's a bunch of different like OBS applications that you can use, Streamlabs, OBS Studio, and all those. So
yeah, let me just.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of like a tickle or a scratchy throat. So if I have to like take a bunch of water breaks, that's why. Also, if I'm not like staring at the camera or the screen, don't worry, I can still hear you.
You're fine. You're
fine. My headset's on. I'm still fully paying attention to what you're saying. And if I don't hear it, I will certainly ask you to repeat what you said.
Go for it. But yeah, back to I'm ready now. I've been recording for the last 5 minutes or whatnot. But you can edit that however you want.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Hold on a second. I just have to change my screen for a second.
I was about to say you have a very nice mic.
Thank you.
You want to donate? You want to donate that to me?
It was actually, I think now it's only like 200. It was like 250 when I bought it. But I mean, this is the SM7, I believe, and then there's the other one, the big brother, basically, which is the longer, more cylindrical one that you see in most streaming or recording, things like that. I think that's that SM7B or something like that.
I just kind of did the all-in-one because like this is I think my headset's the Logitech Pro and it has like blue hearing and voice or something. So I just kind of do the all-in-one a little bit.
I actually. So I had these, I think they're like $80, well, retail $80,
yeah,
HyperX Cloud, I think.
I used to have the HyperX Cloud as well.
Yeah. I actually really like it. I like the sound quality. It's like bass boosted.
I did too.
The thing. So actually, these headphones, and sorry, we didn't get started yet. These headphones are actually, I think the headphones themselves were like $150 for Audio Technica. They weren't like the super nice ones, but they were good quality. It's like true sound, so there's nothing boosted, bassed, or anything. And this microphone has a monitor itself, so it has a software that changes real time my voice in my own ears, if that makes sense. So I can hear post-production sound live, if that
makes sense.
Yeah, and it's huge because like if you have any kind of software that's like playback of mic, there's always a delay, and then you start to stutter just because the delay of the sound messes with your brain. But this is a live sound, and so I could change the EQs, I could turn up gain, like all of that stuff I can do either from the software or from the microphone itself. And so it also has, so it's USB, so it's plug and play. It works day one as with no other setup, but it also has XLR. And so I could do my own like mixing station with a board. So I mean it has upgrade potential. And so this is like effectively as good as you can get. And it does isolate a lot of other sound to highlight vocals because it's specifically meant for podcasting. But let me get another drink of water.
That's fine. I need to text my girlfriend anyway. Okay. Well, I'm ready now. Whenever you are.
Yeah, I was just making sure I wasn't gonna have any more.
Yeah, I texted my girlfriend. I was like, doing podcast now. Talk to you later.
Yeah, for sure. Let me close a couple more things real quick. Just try to like optimize video quality, sound quality, all that stuff.
Go for it.
Minimize distractions and sound. Discord is amazing and really annoying at the same time.
I find Discord just annoying.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean,
that's probably,
don't get me wrong, I use Discord all the time, but I just find Discord annoying majority of the times.
I just mute everything. Like honestly, I'm like, I'll see it if I see it, and if I don't see it, I'll see it when I see it, kind of thing. Like
it's like I have Discord on my phone too, and the amount of Discord messages I get, it's just like, oh my god.
Oh man. Okay, so let me close that. And that one. There we go. Sorry, ADHD, everything can
go. It's fine.
Oh man, my hair so bad. All right.
It's okay. I have a lazy eye. It's all right. At least I feel like I have a lazy. I feel like I have a lazy eye. I feel like my left eye like dips, and it's just like, you know.
Mine might do that too. I mean, my parents at least said that I had one that was kind of off focus or center when I was younger, but I mean, I had good vision until I got older.
Oh, same. It's probably from sitting in front of a computer screen 24/7, but yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining this week's podcast. Today we have on Matt Jordan, or as he goes by online, PushxClimax. He is a live streamer on Twitch, and he also, well, I met him through some video games that he plays, and he's pretty good. So let's go ahead and get into it. Go ahead and introduce yourself, how you like to be called, and um, what's something unique about you that you'd like viewers to know that we can start off with.
What's up? I'm Matt. Sports is being very generous when he says I'm good at video games. He definitely carries my ass all the time. Um, but I'm Matt. I'm a college student at Georgia Southern. That's in Georgia. I'm currently getting an IT degree. I will be graduating here soon. I do stream fairly frequently when I get the chance. Typically late nights, just free vibes, good music, a lot of League and a lot of TFT.
Nice. Okay, so you said that you were almost, or that you're about to graduate soon from with IT
Yes.
degree. Okay, so what made you interested in that, or what do you find most interesting about it or enjoyable about it, and what specific field are you hoping to end up in long term?
So I started out actually as an engineering major, and because that's what my dad did, and I was like, following him parents' footsteps. And then my dad gave me my first computer. He was like, "Hey, do this." I was like, "Wow, I'm going to be able to game. Like, I'm going to be able to play all these high tech games." And he gave me a complete dinosaur. I was just like, "Ugh." So then
That's not a good computer, by the way, for
not a
viewers.
good computer, not a good
Yeah,
computer. Like it
a
was
potato. Yeah.
potato. And I was like, well, I'm working right now. I can save up some money. So I slowly just started, building my computer, and I was just like slowly replacing every part of it, and until I got to where I could do what I do, what I love to do. And that's how I kind of fell in love with IT. And I was just like, yeah, it started out as I just want to game and be lazy, but it turned out to be, what I love to do. And I do end up, or I plan on graduating next summer, 2023 in May.
Okay.
And what I hope to get into is cybersecurity. So I hope to
Oh,
be a security analyst, which the job pretty much pertains as I would say analyzing the company's security and assessing the needs and wants of the security as trying to prevent hackers from hacking into the company and stealing information. Um,
okay.
the best case scenario, prioritizing, high and low of the security, I would say like the optimization of it. Um, I did have a cousin who works for a company that recently got hacked by um, uh,
Just take your
hackers, I
time.
would
Yeah.
say. You know,
Okay.
they're the correct terminology is black hat hackers, which are people who hack for a intent of doing damage.
Oh, okay.
And
Instead of seizing information.
instead of seizing information, and they did ask for a ransom and stuff like that, and my job would just be assessing that information beforehand and trying to prevent that.
Okay. Nice. Not necessarily like
Nice,
mitigating
the
risk
company.
after that happens, but like more trying to,
Correct.
as much as you can, foresight, being aware of other things that are happening globally, and then being able to implement different changes and add new softwares. Are you also going to get into some kind of like coding or software development, or is it just implementation of like already designed software? um I mean, like what kind of variety are you open to?
I'm open to a lot of it. I'm not the best coder in the world, I would say. But I would say that I am open to coding in general. I feel like a lot of IT is partially coding, but there
Yeah,
are a lot of parts of IT that's just the whole process to going into that as like
a lot of overlap.
a lot of overlap, a
Yeah.
lot of translation there are pretty much specific jobs just translating what the coders have to say to the business execs.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
pretty
totally. Yeah.
much just translating what the coders have to say to the people that don't know IT. And
For
that's
sure.
pretty much where I'm getting towards because I enjoy the business side as well. And I'm not a huge coder. I know a good bit of code, but I am not the best coder.
Yeah. What specific code or code lines do you have experience with, or languages?
Um, Python, CSS, JavaScript, HTML, which is
Yeah,
the
websites.
most
Yeah.
w- basic form.
Yeah.
And that is about it. I mean, there are about 1,000 coding languages you can learn.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It
um,
gets pretty intense for
it
sure.
gets pretty in depth.
Yeah.
Another one which would be C++,
Hmm.
but what I would say is, if you want to get into coding, I would say go into the computer science major, as that deals more along the lines of coding.
Hmm.
Um, if you want to be a software developer, if you just want to deal strictly with coding, I would say go with the computer science major because those classes are more along the lines of just straight coding,
Well,
as
what you
well
do,
as
is that different? Is it more hardware or is it more
I would
um
say with IT,
mhm,
it's more hardware, as well as it also opens up the avenue. I wouldn't say opens up the avenue, but it gives a better avenue to um the business side. So if you want to be
okay.
like a business translator, you can be. If you want to
Yeah,
just do more hardware, you can be.
yeah, for sure.
There's like a system. So what I'm interning for right now currently is under the systems administrator for a school.
Oh, okay.
And that's a lot of hardware, ordering computers to optimize this kids and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not so much coding and just protecting the school. It's more of implementing the hardware the kids need, the teachers need to do their job.
Yeah. Administration of the systems, of the networks, of the hardware in any one area to ensure its safety again, or its security and its usability more or less, but making sure that it's always working at a certain level or a stable level. But it's kind of a little bit of everything in that degree. Like
Exactly.
administration is 2% of everything, but
Oh
100%
yeah.
people. So and it I mean IT, I mean I have a little bit of experience in IT. I've worked I've worked for the state, determining eligibility, so I had access to, I mean, several dozen state systems, programs, Linux environments. I've also worked in insurance as well. So I mean, I have
Hmm.
some just basic software understanding, just and then also in hobbies in real life. But then I've also worked for tech support specifically for international companies that have um, that and so I've done email support, text or chat support, as well as phone support for globally
Yeah.
for different platforms, whether it be iOS, Android, web app, um, PC desktop app, like all, excuse me, all kinds of different things. And so I'm aware of a little bit, but at least specialized. I definitely have a lot more to learn.
Oh,
Okay,
for sure.
go ahead.
What's crazy about IT is like you don't really need a college degree at all.
Mhm.
Like there are so many things that I've learned along the way. Like what I just learned about 3 months ago, 4 months ago, after doing this internship is like certificates are almost everything. So there
Absolutely.
are
Yeah.
a whole set of IT certificates that will pretty much make or break like if you get a job or not,
Yeah.
especially once you get higher up. Like if you don't have this IT certificate, mm, nah.
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
on to the next.
And a lot of it
And it
can be self-taught too, just because of the
mhm,
access to how much information exists online and our access to it. Like if you have the motivation and the drive and maybe even the mentor to be able to like at least guide you or a system or tutorials, that kind of thing to guide you into what is most important to prioritize your time in, what to learn first and then next. And it really is, I mean, like you said, college isn't exactly necessary for a lot of these things. And what I'm finding when I'm applying to a handful of different positions for the last several years has been they'll take someone with experience over someone with a degree
mhm,
almost every single time, because one, it's proof that you have done it and that you can do it to a certain level,
mhm.
while college is a manufactured environment where there's a certain standard that you should be able to do, but there may not be any proof that you can do it if you don't have that on your resume. And so I remember when I was at Western Oregon University, they had prioritized a practicums in the psych field. But I mean, there was student teaching internships where they like it was mandatory for the degree that you had to have work experience in some way or another in your field, or some related field. And then that and the resources that they offered and the connections and the networking that they offered. And so it's not exactly what you learn in college, it's just or at least in my experience, it's the resources and the environment that it offers you, the potential that if you are dedicated, if you know what exists, and if you take full advantage of that, then there is room to grow there. But is it necessary? And as you said, you don't believe that it's necessary because
Mm-mm.
of how much more the certificates mean, how much more or all of that information might be available online, just not in a organized, rigorous, paced, standardized course per se, but still proving. I mean, I took a typing course where I just type for 5 minutes or 10 minutes on a standardized test effectively,
Mhm.
and I got a certificate that proved I could type at so many words per minute, and that was that. I didn't necessarily need to take a word processing or a keyboard course and get college credit and then also a certificate that proves I can type at a certain speed. Like I just had to prove it and then have something standardized that proves it. And that's more or less what a college degree is. It's a proof of meeting standards. But now college degrees seem to be a dime a dozen. Everyone has college degrees. So, well, not everyone, but like it's pressured. There's so much pressure on youth and in pre high school or even pre graduation, high school graduation, to attend university or at least a trade school or vocational school or something. But when it may not be necessary, there may be other avenues that someone could take that might be cheaper, that might be faster, depending on the personality and the dedication and the work ethic of the student to learn. So what's your opinion
That's
on that?
where college gets a little iffy for me. So my perspective on college,
Mhm.
because I've had a rocky road with college a little bit,
Same, same.
little too much partying sometimes, but college is not necessary now these days.
Mhm.
College helps, I will say, but
Because it's
if
structured.
it's structured,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't even say more aligned or more so on the lines of it's structured. I would say if you're not going to a top school, and when I mean top school, I mean Ivy League, like Harvard, Duke,
Yeah.
Georgia Tech, Stanford, even now. So Georgia, I mean, I live in Georgia, so I'm just going to name a lot of the Georgia
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
But if you're not going to these schools, because those schools, they will help you get a job at the bigger companies. They will.
You already
I
have a job lined up before you
You have
graduate.
a job lined up
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
probably before you graduate college,
Yeah.
because those schools have dedicated themselves to teaching these students to be prepared. I wouldn't even say be prepared, because if we're going to
Mhm.
be honest, I
Don't feel prepared.
still don't really agree with going to school, not having a day of work in your life, and just
Yeah.
having a job lined up. But I will say they are probably incredibly smart, and within those 6 months of working, they will probably be better than someone without a,
Aptitude.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah, yeah.
say a degree, but like they will have the better aptitude than someone who has like 3, 4 years of experience and, et cetera.
Mhm.
Because it does take a level of skill to get into these schools
And dedication and work
and
ethic to
dedication.
get through them.
And
And even if you could make
exactly,
it into a university or be accepted, it doesn't mean you're going to see success in that pursuit of a degree. And so just the
exactly.
degree means something in and of itself,
Hmm.
regardless of what the degree is in. I mean, you can have a lot of exposure to information and maybe have memorized a lot of information in a specific field, and the degree might suggest you have some of that, but the degree in and of itself, it means something, and to or it used to mean something. And actually what you see is a lot of the time people have degrees, but then their final career, what they end up doing for 20 or 30 years, doesn't directly involve that degree. But if they didn't have that degree, it would have been a lot harder to get in.
Hmm.
And so the degree means you don't necessarily have to know someone, because it proves you know something and you're less risky per se. Or it means that you know how to do what you're told, and because the institution basically grades you on if you can do what you're told.
Exactly.
And
I mean,
therefore, like every boss wants someone that is dedicated, that's going to complete the job on time
mhm.
and do what they're told, and so and reduce liability and risk for the employer and the brand itself.
And that's why I think college is so funky sometimes. Cause like, you know, for companies, would I take a, you know, Harvard student over a community college student? Sure. But
Depends what your
if
budget
I'm,
is.
it depends on, well, yes.
Because they're probably coming out of Harvard with like 400 700K in debt, but
Yeah. But, at the same time, it's like, all right, well, I have two Harvard school students here. Do I take one that has a, track record of working, even if it's fast food,
yeah.
do I take the track record of a Harvard student that has a 3.8 GPA working fast food the entire time they were in college? Or do I take the Harvard student that has a 4.0
Mhm.
that has zero work experience? You know, that's where you have to kind of, it's a little iffy
Yeah.
because right out of college, you know, the 4.0 student might get the job,
Mhm.
but does
But they may
that
not
mean he's
keep
the
it.
better
Yeah.
worker?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No. Down the line, yeah, the Harvard degree means something, but if you're going against a Harvard student,
Yeah.
it's not
It's
going to mean
relative. It's all
jack.
relative, totally.
It's
Yeah.
not going to mean anything that you have a point two higher GPA,
Yeah.
and that's why I've always viewed college as I would s- a general. I would say a general degree, honestly, because
Mhm.
in
For the
five
first 2 years, you're
years,
doing nothing focused on your major.
yeah, you're not
Yeah.
doing anything focused on your major for the first 2 years,
Mhm.
and
At
after I
university level
graduate,
specifically, yeah.
5 years down the line, nobody's going to ask what my GPA was.
Yeah.
They're
They're
just
gonna
going to
say,
look
"What have
at
you
my
done?
work
Who have you worked
experience.
for?
Hmm.
What have you been able to accomplish in that time? And where do you see yourself in 10 or 20 years?" And
Exactly.
yeah, and I mean, yeah, because that's what matters. Like, are you going to be someone that they're going to lose $40,000 training, or $100,000 training, and then just leave right away the second that a better opportunity comes up or something exists with a higher pay? It's like they want to know that you are going to be committed to them, that you're less risky, and what you can actually do for them. And that's why I struggle with GPA, because what does GPA prove? GPA proves how well you thrive within a certain system, a certain
Hmm.
organized learning assessment tool. And I mean, there's a lot of the time it's scantrons. Like,
Hmm.
it's working a different part of your brain. You may not actually know the information, you just know you saw that word a lot, and you
Yeah.
were able to eliminate two of the other options. And so Like,
it's about being a good test taker.
yeah, exactly.
That's half of it.
Yeah,
Is being a good test taker. You can look at a multiple choice test and you can easily eliminate one of them just because
yeah,
it's different than the other
yeah.
three. And then at that point, you have a
33.
uh,
Yeah.
33 percent chance of getting the question correct. And
Mhm.
even at that point, it's like
If you know
it's some
half
of
of the
this.
test, you're already
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And that's the thing. It's like I and I mean evidenced by some of the most successful people failed out of school.
Oh,
Like, or
yeah.
dropped out of school, or felt that, or were told that they were no good, that they were weird, strange, that they didn't belong in society for one reason or another, and then turned out to do such amazing things, be super innovative, entrepreneurial, and build things that no one thought was even possible because their mind was overflowing with ideas of how to improve things instead of just doing what they were told. I mean, I remember in high school, I like grading was like 70% homework and 30% test. But when I got to
Yeah.
college, it was like 75% test, 10% participation, only 15% homework. I mean, I remember
Mhm.
I had a chemistry class where I got an 85, or I guess an 86 in a class. But so it's a B, but I aced every single test.
Mhm.
So it's like I just didn't do the homework because I didn't like the homework, because it made it more confusing, more frustrating. And I like doubled my hours the second week on the homework to get like a lower score than I did the first week. And I told the professor, I said, I understand your grading metric. I I cannot do this homework and still understand the material, like, or it's not worth my time, is basically what I said. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to use that time to prioritize other things. I was taking 17, 18, 20, 21 credits a term for the 6 terms I was in school. And that's nearly 2 times full time. Like 12 credit hours is assumed to be full time because there's 3 to 4 hours outside of class per 1 hour in lecture.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, but
I would say anywhere from 12 to 15 is full
yeah.
time. Yeah.
Well, 15 is what you would need to pace to graduate on time in
On
4
time.
years with the
Yeah.
bachelor's degree with the
Yeah.
minimum level of credits. And so, but 12 is considered full
Full
time.
time. Yeah.
And so if I'm taking 17 to 21, obviously
Yeah.
my workload
Oh.
is so much more. And so I have
Yeah.
to manage my time.
Yeah.
And so I
Fuck
was
that
able to get
shit.
much more done. I was on track to graduate in 4 years with a double degree with 2 majors and a minor,
Mhm.
because, well, the degrees I picked were smaller majors, but regardless, and I came in with credits from high school. So I but the point is that the GPA and the system, it really only highlights certain types of people, certain
Mhm.
types of personalities, certain types of learning styles, and it really leaves certain people behind if
Mhm.
they don't thrive in that system. And there may be super intelligent people, great assets to your company, that are willing to take on risk and think big, that don't thrive in college, and so, or university system. And so how would you even know that? And as you're saying, experience, self-taught, like being able to have the motivation to find the information yourself and do something with it, and then prove you've already done something with it. Like Shark Tank. Like Shark Tank is,
Oh,
I'll give
for
you
sure.
money if you can prove you've already had success. And so it's the same thing. It's like a business. If you go into a business and you can prove you've already had a certain degree of success, they'll take you every single time. Then
Mhm.
if you are average because you have a degree and you can't prove that you've already been successful in that field.
Mhm.
So go ahead. That was a lot there.
I mean, oh, you're fine. Now, I will say before I get onto this, if you are in college right now and you are not doing something extraordinary, do not drop out of college. I understand there are Bill Gateses of the world and stuff like that. Do not risk being that one in a million. I would say easily
Yeah.
a one
Or
in a
yeah.
million being
Yeah.
the Bill Gates.
Yeah. Or
You
less.
know, if
Yeah.
you are doing something extraordinary, if you have your own software or, you have an incredible idea that is profited or something,
Mhm.
go for it at that point. But if you think you can just drop out of college and just start your company up right then and there, don't do it.
Yeah.
You're going to dig yourself a hole like nothing else. Yeah, I mean, a
Yeah.
bigger hole than my head.
Yeah.
Like,
You'll have a
my
ton
head's
of debt
pretty
that
big.
means absolutely nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Stay in college and start your career or business if you have
On
a
the side.
business idea.
Yeah.
And on the side, if it seems to be getting traction, then make the assessment and you can go from there.
Yeah.
Don't do it from the get go. You always have to have a fallback plan. Please have a fallback plan.
And I
But
mean, what you can get from university, and I'll let you go in just a second. Like what you can get
mhm,
from university is networking, resources. You can
yes,
get a brand
yes,
name attached to your name on your resume. Like, I mean, anything else, like so long as you are like you get out what you put in, if you are putting in enough and you have the right mindset and you're there for the right reasons, then you can still find value there. And that's, I mean, that's the whole point
hmm
of this podcast, is that there's value in everything if you choose to see it and allow yourself to not be distracted by everything else. And
hmm
so if there's value there, then you can still extract it. And of course there's value in college, or I mean, there's no, it's just, what is that value? Is it worth the risk of taking on massive debt and prolonging,
hmm
say, big purchases like home ownership, or setting your life back in that you can't take risk because you're burdened by debt, things like that. You're limiting your options already in just because it's what everyone else does. It's like, not saying that it's not good. I mean, it'll make you average, or it'll prove that you're average, but it's not going to prove that you're going to stand out and be the best. And we should all strive to be our best, whatever that means, in whatever field we're in. So
hmm
go ahead. Go ahead.
And I mean, for example, like college was, I would say, my obvious route just because of I want to say just because of my parents, but my parents pushed college. They did.
Yeah.
And you know,
College proper, like university or trade school,
university,
or okay. Okay.
university. They wanted me to go to Georgia.
Oh yeah.
If I really applied myself, I could have gotten into Georgia. I am a lazy fucker. I will just straight up say that. You know,
We all can be,
I
though. I mean,
oh no,
don't be
I
too hard
mean,
on yourself.
nah, I'll be hard on myself because I, for me personally, now I know I could have. I, you know, did I study ever in high school? No, I did not. Did
Yeah.
I do homework? Yeah, but that was the class before the homework was due.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
was I paying attention to the
Habitual
lessons?
procrastinator.
No, I was a
Yeah.
procrastinator on the T.
Yeah.
You know,
College is not built for procrastinators. Like, it's just the way
yes,
that it
I would.
works. You
You
can, but you're not
can.
going to see much success because you have to develop your own pacing. You're not going to get as
hmm
much out of it. You're going to be so stressed. You're probably going to be staying up all night studying, but then you're losing
hmm
sleep and not retaining any of it. And the point is to retain. The point is to learn. And if you're just trying to pass the test, you're actually going against the whole point. The point is to learn. And so, anyway, but
So
continue.
I would,
Continue.
I would disagree with that a little bit.
Okay.
So I would say that, again, like we said earlier, the first 2 years of your college degree is just kind of bullshit classes. They're
Yeah.
general knowledge classes. So, like, for example, comp or English,
Yeah.
I understand reading and writing is important. You need to know how to read and write.
Mhm.
That is done in elementary school and middle school and high school and understand,
Yeah. Yeah.
do
Yeah.
I need to be an expert at reading and writing? No.
You need to know how to
I
communicate.
I need to know how to
That's it.
communicate,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
but
it.
I don't need to know some of these extravagant words that I'm reading in the 10th century book.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know.
It's not necessary. Yeah.
It's not
For
necessary.
95% of things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, for some of that, do I just need to pass the class? Yes.
Yeah.
For some of it, on the other hand, you do need to retain it and understand it.
Yeah.
But I will say I have done my late night study sessions because I
Yeah, we all
haven't
have. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I didn't study anything or learn
Yeah.
anything for the previous, whatever.
Yeah. Which might work, but
Which might work
consistently.
consistently,
It
yeah.
depends on the class and the professor. Yeah.
It
Some you're
depends on the
able to,
class and
some you're not.
professor.
Yeah.
Another big thing for college, you get the right professor. If you don't, you might
Absolutely.
as well just
100%.
screw you might as well
Yeah.
have just screwed yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's totally the teaching styles and the grading metrics. Yeah, absolutely. The right professor can make all the world of difference. They can actually get you
Yes.
interested and invested in a
Hmm.
thing, or it can completely turn you off from a thing. And
Like
I think that exists in everything. But anyway, continue. Yeah.
for example, you know, like I said earlier, I'm not a huge coder.
Mhm.
I'm not a I wouldn't say I'm not a fan of coding, but like I have no interest in going into the coding world.
Full time.
But,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
you know, my data programming 2 professor,
Mhm.
he actually made me enjoy the class. Like I love the class. Like I would vote him for everything excellent, upstanding. Like let him teach the
Yeah.
entire IT program because I will say I don't go to class a ton,
Mhm.
but I made sure I was in class every single day for him because
Mhm.
A, I knew if I wasn't in class, I would have failed that class. And
Mhm.
B, he was such a great professor that I wanted to go to class. And
Yeah,
I enjoyed going to class. I enjoyed learning from him because
absolutely.
he made it feel like it wasn't a college class. He
Mhm.
made it feel like, wow, I'm going to need this later in life for the
Yeah,
real world and for my jobs if I want to do this. Because,
absolutely.
for example, he was like, oh, these are going to be open tests, or you can use whatever you want, but they're going
Mhm.
to be real life world problems. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay. Like, cool. That makes me feel better because
Yeah,
like I don't want to have to memorize something that I can just quickly Google. Like
exactly.
especially
Yeah.
for like my line of work, like I'm almost always gonna be at a computer.
Mhm. And
If I
Google
can
is a
just
resource you can use at work. Like
exactly.
it's not like they say, "Hey, no notes at
Yeah.
work. No
So
Google at work." It's like,
it's like when I have a problem of like, for example, like, oh wow, I forgot this line of code or like the specific word for the
yeah.
code, I can just Google that. And he's okay with that because it's
Mhm.
like you can just use Google in the real world. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to hold you back just because you can't remember those
Yeah.
single 4 character word.
And as you use it more, I mean, it'll become
As you
more
use it more,
second nature,
it'll
absolutely.
second
Yeah.
nature, but it's like he was teaching more real life problems and
Yeah.
he's letting us use all of the resources
Resources,
we're
yeah.
allowed.
Yeah.
Now, there were hard problems, I'll give you that. I mean, they were not easy problems, but
Yeah.
like I'm okay with that because I would rather be taught more real life scenarios than
Yeah.
just memorizing like or a
Stuff
multiple
that you'll
choice
never need.
test
Yeah.
saying that, oh, how do decipher this or how what's the code to put a line here?
Yeah.
I can just Google that shit. I'm not
Yeah. Exactly. And shoot. Um How'd I just completely blank? Actually, okay, yes. So, the you know how most kids or many kids would like struggle or just say that I hate word problems.
yes.
Like, okay, so but
I'm
what
one of
is
them.
okay, so there's two things that need to be done with word problems. So, it's extracting information if you're working from a word problem to a solution.
Yeah.
But in the real world, you may be going the opposite direction. You may have a bunch of data that you need to construct a word problem. So you're given a word problem and people hate word problem because like, well, what's the point? Well, the point is the word problem is
Hmm.
understanding how to construct a word problem and how to
Yeah.
extract data from it so that you can
Yeah.
use that data or like anything that you do know to then isolate certain variables and then come to an answer. But like in that same situation, I mean, like if you're given a real world, here are the conditions, you are part of company A, and here's a budget, or here's a timeline, and you have this many staff, and all of these metrics, you're essentially, it's a word problem. It's just like understanding the reality of your life, putting the most important parts into a word problem, and then coming to a solution based on a full contextual assessment of your current situation. But that's not how word problems are taught. Word problems are like, what's the answer? It's like, well, why does the answer matter as much as understanding how to create a word problem? Like, and so I think a lot of school is here's one direction to the answer, but a lot of why it might be useful is when you understand the relationships between how you even got there and why it's important, and then being able to use that or get to that point or understand how to apply that in real life. And I think that that's something that school just unfortunately fails at, is they don't connect why am I ever going to use this in real life, or how am I ever going to use this in real life, or why is this important to me? And it's like the good professors, the good teachers prove it and say, I had this situation, imagine you're here, and they create a situation for you. It's essentially putting you in the middle of a word problem. What's the answer? And there might be more than one answer. What's the best answer and why? Like it can be math, it can be science, it can be IT. Like in IT, it's like, okay, this isn't working, or this app is crashing. Why? Is it this piece of hardware? Is it this piece of software? Is it bottlenecking? Like, what is causing it? Is it a network issue? Is it a cord? Is it like when you're troubleshooting, you have to identify, okay, what works, isolate certain things, take them out, put them back in, and it's troubleshooting. It's just a matter of time if you are fully aware of how many different variables could be presenting that problem, especially in coding, in that like you just isolate the problem and then you go back and you try to fix it. And then you see, oh, okay, now that created these other issues down here. And so it's just understanding the reality of the content and the full context of your current situation. And I think that's where education fails. Education doesn't put you in real life scenarios, or at least allow you to be able to be aware of the real life scenarios. They kind of just say, what's the right answer? And I don't think that there's often a right answer or one best answer in life. There may be in certain contexts, but why does it matter getting to the right answer instead of just understanding the process and being able to do it yourself in whatever environment you're in?
So I have an interesting view on schools and systems and teaching wise. So I wouldn't
post-secondary
say
or pre-high school graduation?
Pre-high school graduation. I would say that there is a lot being taught that isn't necessary. And I could be completely wrong on this. I mean, it also depends on what you want to go into in life.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of, I would say, I think that we should, as a society, bring back college to where it starts at 9th grade.
Ooh,
where you pick what you want to go into, possibly, or at least a general idea. Like,
and you expose yourself to it as early as possible.
Yeah. Like, I'm not saying get into these types of degrees as like architecture and IT and engineering, but like have a general subset of like, do you want to go math, science, or reading?
Yeah.
That gives you a general idea of like, well, at 8th grade, I knew I was good at math and science, at least.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't have picked the reading aspect. I would have at least gone into math and science. And for people that were really good at reading, they would have for sure gone into reading or
Yeah.
science.
Yeah.
And if
Specialize in one thing that you're
specialize in
either
one
good at or
thing,
have a knack for, or that you are interested in, because the interest in itself is going to motivate you and give you the mindset to be interested and engaged and attentive and learn infinitely more,
Mhm.
and then actually have a marketable skill.
And I'm
Absolutely.
not saying that, if you pick the math or the reading, you're not going to learn math or reading, but it would just be a subset like,
Yeah.
oh, if you chose the math, you only had to do one English class or
Yeah.
two English classes. And if you chose the English section, you would only have to do one or two math sections. Cause like
Mhm.
I knew people in high school that their highest level of math was, pre-calculus.
Yeah.
Well, if they were that bad at math, why weren't they being accelerated in reading? And for people, like me,
Mhm.
you know, I physically had to go to my guidance counselor and say, hey, I'm taking AP calculus and not
Yeah.
just like pre-calc or regular calc.
Mhm.
Why do I have to take the extra step to take this? And why isn't the school pushing for this?
Yeah.
And as well as like I could get on to about the teachers and how they do their teaching, as
Mhm.
well as, you know,
But they're working in an inefficient or broken system. And so there's
they
only
might
so much
be.
they can do. Even if they're great teachers, they might not have the resources. They might not have the time. They might not even have, say, like the liability limits to be able to move children around in between for certain things. I mean, and I was talking about this with another podcast guest. He had said like he was a special ed teacher, and he had said like certain students reacted much better to certain teachers or put in certain environments, and then certain teachers struggled with certain other students. And so
Mhm.
if you were just put with a teacher that the student couldn't thrive, or the teacher wasn't able to meet the needs of the student, then why was the system preventing them from being moved to another one of the special ed teachers specifically? And it's like, well, because there's no more money to be gained there,
And
because, well, it would just be too
I
hard on the, on the student, or, well, it's not necessary kind of thing. But it's really like not seeing the student as an individual. And I think that's personally, I think that's the problem, is that it's a one size fits all thing, which, I mean, by design it's supposed to be, but you're still not recognizing or understanding or elevating the individual within the institution or the system, and allowing them the most potential to meet their highest potential within a one size fits all system.
so my thought process on that would be like s- I understand how that can work for smaller schools.
Yeah, it definitely.
But when you're dealing with a bigger size school, say you
Yeah.
have 500 kids in the class, like,
Yeah.
your ninth grade class is 500, and that's
Especially
being
university level. Yeah. Yeah. You sit in a lecture hall of 2 to 500. Yeah.
200. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's even in high school, that's being generous of the freshman class being 500. I was only in a 6A school, which is the second highest, and my freshman
Oh,
class
second
was a
highest. Wow. I don't think we have any 7As here.
we went up to 7A because
Wow.
we had so many kids.
Yeah.
Or well, my school not, but like the state of Georgia went up to 7A because they had so many kids in so many of these schools.
Yeah.
We were only a 6A, and our freshman class was, I think, 700 to 800
Yeah.
kids for the
Yeah.
freshman class.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say like, oh, well, this kid would be better with this teacher,
Mhm.
especially if they haven't dealt with that teacher
Yeah.
as
That's a very
much.
specific individual. Yeah.
That's a
But
very
yeah.
specific individual,
Or
and
situation,
that
individual situation.
special individual might react better to the teacher
Mhm.
because that teacher is giving a lot of extra time and effort. And
Yeah.
if they were, I understand special ed is in a whole subset of
Yeah.
itself.
It's its own category. Yeah.
It's its own
Yeah.
category. So like if you put a special ed kid in a normal class, they might not be getting those special needs or that special attention to
Yeah.
be like sitting down, like saying, hey, this is how it's going.
Accommodations. Yeah. It's typically the
Accommodations,
word,
yeah.
the PC word. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, they might react better to that teacher,
Mhm.
but if that teacher is trying to teach 25 other students, they
Yeah.
might not be getting those accommodations that they need
Absolutely. Yeah.
to be, you know, uh getting that
Yeah.
bond with the teacher.
Yeah.
So
Which
that's
can't
why
happen in massive schools.
in massive schools, yes.
So we
Now, in
need
private
smaller class
schools,
sizes.
we
I
either
mean,
need
yeah,
smaller class
continue.
sizes or more schools. I mean,
Or
it's
both.
hard to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. I mean, more schools would result in smaller class sizes. And there might
Hmm.
be ways to get more schools because typically funding, especially state or public funding, comes as a per enrollment basis. If you say have 2,100 kids enrolled, you get a certain amount based on your
Hmm.
location or whatever per student enrolled. And so, but it's the initial cost of building a school, which is, multi-million dollars, therefore that is often the problem. But if the payout would be infinitely better outcomes, but it's cost. And so again, it's all in a balance. It's like, well, in urban environments, how can you have 20 kids per class when you have 7 million people
Yeah.
in 27 square miles? Like,
And I will say, like, so
or
my
less.
mom works at the board office.
Okay.
So for like the county I went to and stuff like that. And I will say they divvy up the Title One schools. So I don't know if you know what Title One school means, but it's like the lower poverty schools,
Okay.
like the schools that like the apartments or houses aren't, well off. So they're
Okay.
the
Like higher crime areas or lower income areas, things like that.
lower income
Okay.
areas. Yeah, that's
Okay.
a good
All right.
that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
So the lower income schools, she was having a hard time finding places to put the Title One funds.
Hmm.
Like, and that's where I'm just at a loss sometimes because it's like you're having a hard time finding where to put the Title One funds at because it's like, what do you need extra? And that's
Hmm.
where it also somewhat stems from the parents because, and I understand
Absolutely. Yes. It's totally the parents,
the
I'll
parents.
I'll let you finish and then I'll cut in on that.
I understand some parents, they do everything for their kids. They
Hmm.
do everything they need for their kids. Like
Yeah.
they are working two jobs. They are doing everything they can to put their kid either in a private school or doing what they can to put food on the table.
Yep.
I applaud you for that. Like
Yeah.
you do you keep doing what you're doing. But there are also some parents that are, you know,
Not
working 30,
interested.
not interested,
Yeah. Or
not
no
asking their
time
kids,
because they
no
don't make enough
time.
money, so they have to work 3 jobs. Maybe it's a single mother who
And
just who their child is constantly, with a
mhm,
family member or in daycare, and the child doesn't have the same opportunity to thrive. Absolutely,
mhm.
absolutely. Yeah.
And that's where it's like hard to say because it's like, well, are we really blaming the teachers now? Are we just gonna chalk it up as the parents because the parents aren't telling the kid to get up for school to go to
Yeah.
school, or are we
Yeah.
chalking it up as the kid's not doing his homework because the parent's not looking to see if he's done his homework,
Yeah.
or is
Or the
the parent
stress and
actually
abuse, and I mean any other context that could keep a child, say, distracted. Maybe they have an
Mhm,
unsafe home environment, and so how can you even focus on school
mhm.
when you're not even getting nutrition at home? I mean, there's all kinds of other
There's so
factors
many
that, like,
scenarios.
yeah, and in a one size fits all environment, especially with low funding, like how can you meet the extra needs that are in those communities for
But
the
the thing
students
is,
that
I
don't
don't
get
think
it at
it's
home
low
or
funding
parents?
though. I don't think it's low funding is the
Oh, okay.
problem. That like because when I'm hearing these Title One schools have extra funding,
Mhm.
where's the extra money going to go? What's going to help that? What's the
Yeah.
extra money going to help? Is it going to help the kid go to school? No. Is it going to help the kid learn more? It depends. I mean,
Yeah.
are you going to pay a teacher more that makes it more engaging? Possibly.
And
Are you
would the
going
pay
to
of a teacher actually
pay
result
of a
in the outcome of a
teacher?
more invested teacher?
And
Perhaps, but
we can get into that conversation in a second because
yeah,
I
yeah,
have a
yeah.
very,
Okay.
very interesting
All
take
right.
on that one.
All right. Yeah.
But I mean, is that going to help the kid go to school or do his homework?
Yeah.
Or I mean, there's so many different scenarios, but I don't think funding is the problem. I think that
Hmm.
instead of maybe giving taxpayer, I wouldn't even say giving, the schools more money or less money,
Hmm.
but it's just like the parents need to be more engaging. Cause like,
100%. Yep, totally
regardless
agree.
of how my point of view on school was, like, I still hate school. I will always hate school.
Yeah.
Fuck school. But I'm still getting my degree.
Yeah.
Went to school Monday through Friday through high school
Hmm.
every single day. I didn't enjoy my homework,
Hmm.
but I still did my homework. And that was because of my parents.
Yeah.
You know, if I came home failing classes, my mom would have probably smacked me upside my head.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
would have been
There
like,
was no option to
there
skip
was no
school. No,
option to
yeah, it
skip
wasn't even on
school
the
or
table at
not.
all.
It
Yeah,
wasn't on
I
the
I was the
table.
same. Yeah, I was the same.
I would have not gone to golf practice or I wouldn't have been able to go hang out with my friends. There was zero option of that.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
where I think the parent side needs to kick in more.
Yeah.
And I understand certain circumstances of like the parent might actually just be tired because she's working 80 hours a week to
Yeah.
just put food and stuff on the table.
Exactly. Yeah.
But at the same point, there might have been scenarios beforehand to
Hmm.
where, you know, maybe I don't move into this apartment. Maybe I choose to live in this apartment and my kid goes to this school.
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, I don't think schools differ that much.
Hmm.
In a whole county, the school is not going to differ so much to where I need to pay $300 extra a month in rent for
Hmm.
my kid to go to school here.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Okay, so so you touched on one thing at the very end, and then I'll get back into the parents, and then we can
Mhm.
talk about the teachers' pay.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
so you had talked about where you live determines where you go to school. I think that
Mhm.
that's how it's been done. It's like if you live
Of
on this
course.
side of this street, this is the only school that your kid can go to.
Mhm.
And that's a problem because then anyone who can't afford to live in that area can't send their kid to, say, a quote better school. You had said that so you had touched on a couple of things. You had said that is it worth it to spend $300 more to send them to a school it's maybe the same? From the other side, is it worth it if you don't have 300, or why should it be that if you don't have $300 more that you don't even have the option to send your child to a better school? Maybe you want to use that $300 to invest in tutoring or something,
Mhm.
or put them in a school regardless of where you are able to find places to live. And now with inflation and people struggling with even finding housing
Yeah,
at
fuck
all,
inflation. We can
like
fuck
school
inflation.
choice outside of a certain district, while funding may be allocated for certain, or in a different way, that, or per enrollment basis, or something else. And often it's not just property taxes, it comes from a different fund or Department of Education on federal level, or regardless of what it is, there's state funds as well.
Mhm.
But that there's two sides of that coin. There's one, if all schools are the same, then it doesn't matter, so why should you be forced to go to one? Or if all schools aren't the same, then why are we forced to go to one? And you had even talked about private schools, that the parents that can afford to
Mhm.
send their kids to the private schools like get better education. So if private schools result in better education, what are they doing differently that the public schools aren't? Are they getting more funding, less funding? Because most public schools or private schools are small, super small, because there's
Mhm.
not that many people or families that can afford an extra $9,000 a year per student, or $6,000 per student if you have more than one, to send all of your kids to the school when you're already paying for public school and not getting any kind of allocation or state funds or whatever, or aid to send your child to education. You're effectively paying for education twice. But if they have the better education, why can't we transform our public education system into something that more resembles a private education per se? Is that even an option or on the table? Like, what are they doing not? And so that's that. But then again, so that's a whole nother conversation. But when you talked about the parents specifically, absolutely, parents, it's responsibility of personal choice. And you have the freedom to do what you're going to do, but there are realistic consequences for that. And children don't have any other options outside of what the choices that are made by the parents and the consequences of those choices. And so I would absolutely encourage everyone, per their own situation. Of course, some parents might want to do that, but they just can't for whatever reason. Either there's mental health, or there's or job loss, or wages, or whatever reason. Maybe they had a really bad past, they found themselves in a ton of debt, or whatever the reason, they got into a marriage and then it didn't work for whatever reason, they couldn't make it work, or there was abuse, and then now you're all alone, you're trying to care for your kids, maybe your spouse is in prison. I mean, there's a ton of situations that could make it so much harder for a parent to be involved and invested. But ultimately, it's most affected by, I mean, the education comes from the parents, and the schools coordinate with parents to work, or should, I mean, this is an argument I'm making, should work with the parents and understand that the parents are the most vital teacher that a child can have. And so they need to involve the parents and get the parents involved in it. And I mean, and you had talked about how board member, and so parents can be involved. And sometimes there's programs that can allow parents to get involved, but they just choose not to, or maybe they don't know what's available. And so getting communication to them is, through letters or through phone calls or any way possible, is, I mean, somewhat ineffective, or there's pros and cons, but the biggest part is the outcome needs to be parents choosing to take more interest and attention in the education of their children, not being standoffish, not being selfish with other choices, which, I mean, that's like a morality thing, which, I mean, I don't want to force anyone to do anything or not do anything. Just help them understand what are the consequences of your actions, and understanding you have the power to change because you made a choice that now resulted in your decision. There's some things that affect you that you don't have control over, but there are absolutely things that you have control over, and you need to focus on those. And I think that just interest and just presence in the child's life or in the child's education is a big part of that. So anyway, so go ahead, respond, and you then continue talking.
The whole thing about being standoffish. I mean, I would say I have firsthand, I have secondhand of being or hearing of standoffish parents, which can be very unhelpful at times.
Absolutely,
because
my apathetic disregard, oh, okay, that's nice, okay, keep it, we're busy, just go run along, it just, any of those things that just, the child wants to be loved and engaged and feel like they matter and valued, and then share their experiences, and then have you engage with them too, and talk about it, and that is where the enjoyment comes from. But if it's just whatever, you don't get that. So anyway, continue.
And I'm not even talking about that in itself. I'm talking with the school systems, like the parents trying to be so assertive sometimes with trying to get their kids the needs they need. And my mom's a assistant administrative currently, and she's getting a new job in a week or two, because she basically said fuck that job, because her job turned into answering phone calls of angry parents. And these angry parents were calling the board office because of miscellaneous things. And when I mean miscellaneous things, I mean back to the whole zoning issues. Oh, I need my kid to go here. Well, you don't live in this school district, you can't go here. And these parents would just get all hell bent, and it's this is how the law kind of works. And it's you're putting your anger in the wrong places. As well as
You're wasting the energy
you're
because
wasting the
yeah,
energy. Focus
because that
more on your
motivation can be better
kid.
on better spent on maybe changing the law, like
Changing
like
the
or
law
getting invested in spreading awareness of that law exists and why it might be better to tackle it differently, like instead
as
of saying I'm so frustrated with the system. You're right, but that's just the way it is. Like, but that makes me frustrated. It's you're legitimate, like you have legitimate reason to be frustrated. I can't change that as much as I want to. Like,
as well as like, you know, I figured out the graduation rates from all of the county schools from what
mhm,
my mom told me, a couple years ago. You know,
yeah,
my school used to be number one. It's not even close to number one anymore.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
all of them are typically within the, I would say 70 to 90% range,
yeah.
maybe even
Standard
lower.
deviation. Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you can go from there. You think the change is the school systems on those graduation rates? No. I could You think the from school 1 to school 2, if school 1 is at 60% and school 2 is at 80%, you think that's because of the school?
Hmm.
Hell no. I think it's because of the parents and the kids.
Yeah. Because they're
Sure, you can
individuals.
hire
I mean, you have
because they're
2,000 here and
individuals.
2,000 there, or 600 here, regardless. That they're different people. You have different households, different household realities, different
Mhm.
kids, and different performance levels. Like they say, oh well, law of large numbers will average out, but it's not a large number or law of large numbers because you're still talking about a set amount of people in a set district or zone in a
Mhm.
city that may or may not encourage certain people or people with certain or families with certain family situations to live there over other areas, or other areas might discourage them for whatever reason, maybe too expensive, from living there. And yeah, and so so in psychology there's a term for that. It's correlation does not equal causation. And so
Mhm.
it's saying that even it's because there could be something else present that's causing that to be correlated or
Mhm.
different, or correlated positively or negatively. Or there could I mean, like, in the one of the most common examples is like ice cream sales and the beach. Do people just want ice cream when they go to the beach, or is it hot? It's
Yeah.
summer. And so summer creates
Yeah.
both of those outcomes. Exactly. And so you can't prove direction. It's like, well, is it the 60% rate that is causing the students to not be successful in terms of like several decade, like generational poverty? Sorry, I've cat on my
Oh no,
cat.
I know. I saw the cat earlier. I
Yeah, yeah.
realized that was a cat on the
Sorry. Yeah,
keyboard.
yeah, yeah. Trying to make sure he doesn't like touch
Oh,
anything on
you're
the mouse or
fine, dude.
keyboard.
I was
Yeah.
just enjoying that a little bit.
And then you have the second, so yeah, or it could be the other cause. It could be that the people who are already in the families or the homes or the district or the school uh result in a certain like cause of exactly. And so just because it's correlated doesn't necessarily prove the problem, but
Mhm.
understanding the context of why it exists is necessary to be able to appropriately address it effectively and
Exactly.
improve it.
I mean, that's why I think
It's only
school
4 weeks
systems
old.
are just that's why I
So
think
little.
school systems are so broken at times because it's like
Mhm.
you have sometimes you have grumpy teachers who are, I will say this is probably a hot take, who are underpaid. And
Yeah,
I think a good teacher should get paid.
yeah.
But I also think a bad teacher should get underpaid
Mhm.
because at a certain point, say you have a stereotypical job, right?
Okay.
You work 52 weeks.
Yeah.
You probably get 2 weeks paid off, a couple sick days, you know,
Yeah,
that's
after
it.
after you've
I,
already been there a year, you don't get any vacation the first year.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean,
And
yeah,
most
at
experiences that I've had
most,
it, but yeah,
sometimes,
yeah,
but, if they
yeah,
might be generous and give you a 1 week off vacation time for your first
yeah,
year, but,
yeah,
you're working 50 weeks, 49 and a half weeks.
yeah.
A teacher, for example, gets at least a week off for Christmas.
Yeah, 39. I think well, it's 39 plus a few extra like in-service weeks and things like curriculum days, things like that. I think it's 13-week trimesters 3 times, or at least what we have here. I don't know if it's the same. Obviously, I know there's
I'm
terms,
sure it's
quarters, semesters,
probably
things like that. But
similar. I mean, I'm
yeah,
just talking,
yeah,
standard
3 months
middle,
less or 2
elementary,
months less.
middle,
Yeah,
high
yeah,
school. You get a few months off for summer. You get Christmas break, spring break, Thanksgiving,
yeah,
holidays,
yeah.
etc.
All
You know,
federal holidays. Yeah.
do you really think the government, or however much we should pay you? I would say a typical teacher salary is probably like 35K a year.
It depends on the state. I
It
mean, it
depends
could
on
be
the state,
35, could be
but like
48, could be 60. Yeah, but it really depends on the state.
it really depends on the state. But
Yeah.
like, should I really be paying you more than someone that works an extra 11 weeks
If
than
you're
you?
average or less than average. Yeah.
Less
And
than average. I
yeah.
mean, they're working an extra 11 weeks probably, because that would put you at 50 weeks if you add an extra 11, if we're
Yeah.
calling it 39
Yeah.
weeks.
They might have
And they
another
get
job in the summer, yeah, to compensate
they
lost
might have another
wages.
job,
Yeah.
but if you're getting paid 30, whatever it is,
Yeah.
depending on the state, I mean, I wouldn't say that's god awful. I mean, if as long as you pick up an extra job, and I understand there are some teachers that get paid, or they don't get paid to come
Mhm.
in and set their classroom up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I also know that for most salary jobs, at a certain point, you're working more than 45, 40 hours a week, and
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
only get
Very
paid
long
that.
days. Yeah. You
You're
get there at
working
6
long
a.m. and you're
days.
there until 5 p.m. And like there's
Like,
super long days. Like when and like so exactly. So the best teachers are undervalued, underpaid, and the
mhm,
worst teachers are tenured and overpaid. And it's
mhm,
like, do we prioritize the education of the students? Do we show value in our staff? Do we care about who we hire? And the reality is there's a lot of like just indirect discouragement to go into that field because of the amount of stigma and because of the restrictions and all of, and regulations and all of these things, in that like maybe the best people are being pushed somewhere else, or there's just, because the pay structure, there's just not room for them to make any more than
mhm.
those who are just showing up and doing the
And it's
minimum and not actually good net positive for students.
like the best teachers I've had so far were millionaires that just came back to teaching because
They
eh,
loved it because they enjoyed
they
it.
loved
Yeah.
it.
Because
They
they cared
wanted to.
about the kids.
They
The money
cared
didn't
about the
matter.
kids. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying the people that don't make a lot of money don't care about the kids. I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
But it's like the teachers that were 40 or 50, they cared about the kids. They literally are only doing this because they want to teach. They only
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
to teach the students, as well as, back to the whole point of the wage thing. My
Yeah.
dad, my dad, he made a sacrifice. He
Mhm.
wasn't there for most of my childhood because he flew out every Monday morning at
Yeah.
4 o'clock in the morning. He came back every Friday night at 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I worked.
Mine was similar. My dad would travel for work. And so like I definitely suffered from that. The family suffered from that, like not having him
Yeah.
home, because young adolescent teen boys need structure, need a firm hand, and need that
Mhm.
presence of the authority figure, and the fear of authority to I mean there's
And
so much
I'm
more there, but yeah, absolutely. So
great.
I had a very similar situation.
I am grateful for him. He
Yeah.
made I personally think he made the correct sacrifice. I
Yeah.
think I was okay without him, but at the same time, like, was
It
he
was a
there for every
sacrifice.
football game that
Yeah.
I went to as a peewee? No. But at the same time, like,
Yeah.
I even worked with him for a summer. Like, I worked at the company he was working for,
Mhm.
and I was working in the warehouse as an intern.
Yeah.
Technically I can put it on my resume as an intern.
Yeah.
I was just working in the warehouse.
Mhm.
I was up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wee early hours in the morning. Yeah.
Way early hours. I was working 12-hour days.
Yeah.
She would maybe get up at the same time as me or slightly after. I would get off work at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I wouldn't see him till 6, 7 at least.
Yeah.
Some days. I mean, he was working like 60 hours a week, but he was only getting paid 45. And that's where like my whole issue with some of these people that work salary or want more pay for their jobs. Are you working 60-hour weeks? I don't fucking think so. If you want to, then let me see it. Show it to me, and I will gladly pay you more.
Yeah.
But you're not. And that's where I have an issue with some of these people, because it's like you just want it because the I wouldn't even say title, but it's like, oh, teachers get underpaid? No, you don't. I'm sorry. You don't. You work 39 weeks and you might work a little extra. If you want, I will pay you hourly. I would be okay if teachers got paid hourly.
Yeah.
Just put their salary in hourly, and if they work more, they work more, and pay them overtime. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And if you want to give them a pay raise, encourage them to work more.
Yeah.
Encourage them to work more.
Yeah.
If they're doing a great job, give them a pay raise. If they're not, keep them at the same shit. And if they want to work their 40 hours, they can work their 40 hours and keep the same wage.
Yeah. Meritocracy, effectively. Those who earn it get more, and it creates an incentive to be better, to do more, to work more, to be more invested in the type of work you're doing. And you touched on a few things. You had said that the passion, the money didn't matter. Regardless of if they had money, didn't have money, they did the job because that was what was most important.
Yeah.
They were most involved, most engaged, and most attentive because that was their end goal, was seeing success for the students. And those were the best teachers, regardless of what they were paid, what they weren't paid. And so that's why I said, like, I don't know if more money will necessarily always result in better teachers, because those who already want
laziness.
Those who already are already the best teachers are doing it outside of the pay. And I think that's something that we should compensate, is like, if you're one of the best teachers, you should get compensation, and you shouldn't have to live, sub-poverty wages, even though you're only working less of the year. Like, you're so impactful to the next generation. And with my students, say, or my child, for 7 hours a day for, impressionable years or whatever it is. And so, like, we undervalue teachers that are in every capacity, and we undervalue the position. I think that a lot of people talk about like how much teachers go through, what they're required to do, the expectations on them, and the dealing with the parents, and in their current system. I think that there's some empathy to be had there, that they're doing the best they can not they, but some are doing the best they can given their environment, and some are just there for the pay. But then some will say, well, who would do this for the pay? They're insane. The pay isn't good enough. And so it's like, what do we want to encourage or reward? We want to encourage teachers who are involved, engaged, and prioritizing the education of the students and the success of the students, and then compensate that and hire based on that. And if there are more, then hire more. If there are less, like, you kind of like encourage more people to get involved. And I think some people are doing that, but yeah, bottom line is, okay, so you'd also talked about salary. When I was working at a fast food restaurant, and this is a fairly high cost of living area or state, I was making $30K. Well, $30K was the standard salary position. I was making $32K. So it was technically like the big bucks is how the owners phrased it, but it was $32K, and it was salaried for 50 hours a week for the entire year, because it was 5 10s. And then because it was salary, they would call me first if someone called in. So I
Yeah,
might
of
have to
course.
work a 6th day. And then they started scheduling me 6 days because
Yeah.
they had a general manager quit at one of their franchises.
It's
And
exactly how that
so I was
goes.
working 6 days, and it wasn't 10 hours. It was 10 hours plus an hour to get the next manager caught up. So they didn't start behind. So it was 6 11-hour shifts. And then they started scheduling me 11-hour shifts, 6 11s. And then it turned into 6 12-hour shifts. And because I would have to work an extra hour, and again, I wasn't doing it for the pay. I was doing it because I enjoyed the job, I enjoyed the people that I was working with, and I didn't want them to be put in a worse situation because I didn't manage my shift well, or because we had 3 buses come in or whatever. And it's like, but 72 to 75 hours a week, up to compensating 32,000 a year with not 5, it's 40 hours still of sick pay, which is minimum mandatory by the state. Which again, when you're working 8-hour shifts is 5 days. When you're working 10-hour shifts, it's 4 days. And when you're working 12-hour shifts, it's 3.5 days or less. And so it's like, so I got even less time off, but they advertise it as you'll get a full week of vacation.
Oh yeah.
But it was a full week of vacation that either one, I would never get approved off because they needed me, or two, that they wouldn't give me until after a year. And then guess what happened in the year? They said, we don't think salary position is working out for you. So we'll keep you at the same, whatever, $12.31 an hour based on 50 hours a week at $32K per year. But then we'll only schedule you 28 or 29 hours so that, one, it doesn't look like we have this many full-time employees, so we don't have to give you benefits. No insurance benefits, by the way.
They don't want to, they never want to give you benefits.
Yeah, exactly. And so working 72 hours, and that was the trade-off. It was like, well, do I want to stay working salary, working 50 to 72 hours a week? And if you work less than 50, they schedule you more the next week regardless. So again, it's like at least 50.
You take a gamble if you're able to pick up enough shifts because people call out,
but you can't.
Then you're able
because
to
they
get
intentionally
benefits.
Don't schedule you because they need to stay under certain minimum quotas. They don't want to give you interest,
but people
and because
call out,
and because you're making more money than other people, because I was good at my job, and I got a ton of like customer compliments, corporate compliments, things like that, because I was recognized and getting tips at fast food, which doesn't typically happen. But like people knew me by name, I knew the customers by name at all 3 franchises I was working at. Like that, I was one of their best employees, if not their best employee, recognized by corporate at the district level. And then they said, because we're paying you this much money, we're not going to give you a paid doc. We're just going to cut your hours in half. And so then I was like, well, I'm now expected to have a fully open schedule, but only being given 28 or 29 hours a week at $12 an hour. I'm like, I need the hours. Like the hardest part was like, I'm not paid for the amount of work I'm doing. And so instead, you're going to make me do less work, but cut my pay in half. Like, and then not actually and then take away my vacation that I had earned, because there was no vacation for hourly employees, especially if I wasn't full time, and with no benefits at all. And so at that point I said, well, while I love the work, I love the job, I love the people, I can't work here anymore. It's not the best thing for my family. It was around the time that I was getting married. And I said, I need to look for a better opportunity. And since then, I haven't found many options that are much better. And it's like, that's the most frustrating thing, is like, I understand that wages, money doesn't just happen. I mean, unless you're government, money doesn't just happen. And then, so to get higher pay, you usually have to bring in more revenue to the business, bring in more profit, so that there's potential for higher wages. And so I understand that just general business budget, in that you have to make at least this much to expend at least this much. And so often people want more pay because they feel they're worth more, but there's just not the money there in sales or in revenue. And that's just the reality of the situation. And so most of the time, when those people see that they're worth more, they leave, go somewhere else that can pay them more, that can sustain higher wages. And I would encourage that. I would encourage finding, like, knowing your worth, and then finding someone that values you at whatever you're worth. I'm not putting a number limit on it. It might be 20K, might be 70K, might be 150K, like whatever it is, or paid on a on a per, commission basis, or therefore, like in sales is completely different. You're not like, you're there for 150 hours. It doesn't matter. You're paid on a certain percentage, maybe 3% or 70% of however much you sell.
Sports,
and I think that's
I'm gonna stop you right
model.
there. I have to go to the bathroom.
Oh, that's fine. That's
really
fine.
bad.
Yeah, you're good. Thanks for talking.
Sorry
Welcome
about
back,
that.
no, you're all good.
It literally just couldn't hold.
I was talking too long anyway. So yeah, that's, I think that each business is unique again. So it's not like there's no one size fits all policy for businesses. And I think that was one of the most harming thing about the last 2.5 years, was that small businesses especially couldn't sustain the changes in culture, the changes in laws, the changes in mandates. I mean, whatever it was that, what was it, 50%? Maybe it's just my state, but 50% of small businesses closed their doors permanently. Like, that's
I would say that's
terrible.
Somewhat,
like, but anyway,
terrible. But
because then again, there's less opportunity for people, and the point is you want to be able to have a skill that or produce something that creates value for people that then they're able to invest in. And then you, like, effectively working is just offering someone else value and them compensating you for that value that they received with other money, which is effectively a representation of value. If you have a ton of money, you probably offered a lot of value to a lot of people, or a ton of value to one person, or whatever, in like a form of a product or business sale or art or whatever. But like, money is a form of a symbol of how much value you have offered one another. And the more money that you spend, it just means that you're taking more value from other people. You're consuming value. So and everyone wants more money but how do you get more money? Well, you offer something of value to people who are able to pay. It's not that people don't get value out of it. It's just that some people just aren't able to pay. And that's just the reality of the situation. It's good, it's bad. Well, it just is what it is. And so what can you do? I mean, and I'll end it here, or at least for my part. What can, like, to each person, to each viewer, listener, what can you do to offer more value to people, whether it be an employer, whether it be creating your own something, whether it be learning a skill, whether it be finding innovating new ways to bring in more revenue, more sponsorships, more collaborations to someone who can pay and is worth and finds that value in you. If you want more money, do something that values other people. And that's why I think that the free market is one of the best systems, if not the best system, because I only get if I give, if I offer something to someone else. I'm not just taking. I have to offer something to get anything. And then just the reality of that meritocracy is those who don't offer any value can't consume. Should we encourage that? Should we discourage that? And that's a different argument. So anyway, so go ahead.
So I'll get back. So for example,
I know there's a lot there.
Back to like the whole, I wouldn't say like just restaurant in general, but like jobs in general with the value, right? Actually, we'll go way back with the whole COVID relief. Well, like the whole small business closes, etc. I think the government really fucked up with this.
100%.
With the COVID relief pay, there was too little investigation of who got the COVID relief pay. As in, I was a college student at the time who got COVID relief pay because my parents weren't paying for anything at the time, but they were still supportive of me. If I really fell in a fucking hole of like, hey, I am in debt here, like I can't pay my rent this month, they would have paid my rent and I would have had to pay them back. But it's not like I would have taken a complete hit on my like credit or whatever, And so like I still got like I would say like $2,000 in COVID relief pay when I
Mhm.
necessarily didn't need it. Like I was still working at the time. I was still making money. I didn't need it. I knew friends who were technically unemployed at the time
Mhm.
who were just getting paid COVID relief pay for like 15. They were making more. They were making like $3 an extra hour than I was, and I was still working.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
Well, and
it's
that
like,
yeah,
why are they getting paid to go lay by the pool while I'm actually working,
yeah,
getting paid less? Like
yeah,
that should have never been a
yeah.
thing.
Well, and
I
I
think
was
there was
I'm
few
sorry,
regul oh,
yeah,
you're fine.
okay.
I think there was few regulations on the COVID relief pay that should have been more regulated.
Mhm.
And it's the COVID relief pay is still going on now. I mean, I went on my tax return. I got
Mhm.
money that I shouldn't have because fell fell below the poverty line. Like I'm sorry, I didn't think I fell below the like, I
Mhm.
understand I'm a college student and I'm paying for a lot, but
Yeah.
like at
Yeah,
the end of the
$300 a
day,
week for 52 weeks when you're a college student. Yeah, if yeah, you don't have enough, especially if you're filing on your own, in
and I
terms of
do file
taxes.
on my own because I
Yeah.
do pay for a lot on my own, but at the same time, like I do have the safety net of my
Mhm.
parents if I truly need it, but like
Yeah.
I got an absurd amount for not really a lot
Yeah.
because I made enough money or saved enough money to quit my job and go school full time again.
Yeah.
And I don't think I needed that money at all.
And
That
the
should have,
amount that was paid, went created, I mean, directly or indirectly, created a disincentive to work, because why would I work when I would make less
oh,
than what
yeah.
I could make by not working? And so, yeah, so and again, it was a one size fits all policy, which
Yeah.
are problems because then it doesn't take into account like the context of where you live, what's the appropriate amount to allocate to these areas, things like that, based on, like the cost of gas, if it's
Hmm.
$9 or if it's $2, or the cost of a gallon of milk, if it's $2 or if it's $9, like a certain, or a cost of an apartment, a one bedroom apartment, is it 5,500 a month, or is it 500 or 300 a month?
Shit,
Like,
I
and
would
that's,
die if it was 5,500.
yeah, LA, New York, yeah, good luck. 300,
Yeah.
400 square feet and you're paying 5,000 a month. Like, it's
Have fun
just,
with that.
but I mean, if you're making 200K a year,
Yeah. I mean, but I don't know what single person making 200K a year. I mean, you best be doing something amazing, but
yeah,
that goes
yeah,
back to my whole point to what you said earlier about like what can you do to get like a pay raise or example or like differentiate yourself.
yeah,
If we're going to be honest, there's not a lot you can do to differentiate yourself in a, you know, lower company. Like like
yeah,
fast
yeah,
food
yeah, yeah,
example,
exactly.
I used to be an assistant manager. I could have taken a general manager position if I probably really wanted to. Like you know, they probably would have offered me the job
Mhm.
if they knew I was staying, but they knew I wasn't staying.
Yeah,
But, you know, for a cashier example, like you're just working the register,
yeah,
you know, even if you're a great cashier, I'm not going to pay you more than 50 cents an hour
yeah, yeah,
because in reality, you're not making much more
yeah,
business.
exactly.
And I can hire a high school student
Yep, yeah,
that's going to take
yeah.
750.
And then people
Now,
say they're not livable wages.
they're not livable wages. Well,
Yeah,
you are not working more than 40 hours a week. I can
yeah,
guarantee you that because at a fast food place, I'm not trying to pay you overtime.
yeah.
And at
There
the same
some require you
time,
to make an open schedule, but yeah, anyway, yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
can have open availability and we might call you in, but you're not going to be working more than 50 hours a week. And if so, then
yeah,
there's a hiring process that's going to hire more people probably.
yeah, yeah,
Because if you're having to accept a shift or two every week,
yeah.
they're gonna hire someone else, most likely.
Unless
As
there's
well
no
as
one that's willing to
unless
work,
there's no
especially
one
for
willing to
those
work.
wages. And that's actually exactly what we saw. It was like
Mhm.
everywhere was understaffed because there were so many people
Yeah.
disincentivized to work, or I didn't have to work right now or something, that the outcome was less exchanges of value, less voluntary exchanges of value in a free market, meaning there's less value, meaning there's less supply, meaning that there's more demand because of more money and more demand for a lower supply, which means higher prices. And that's exactly what we're experiencing now, is higher prices because of a limited supply and an increase of demand. When I have $50,000 versus when I have $5, it changes my demand on what I'm willing to spend on certain things, how much I'm willing to spend on housing and a computer and everything else. And so like when you have too much money chasing too few goods, the result is inflation, and that's exactly what we're seeing now. So I completely agree with you that there were several things that happened, whether it be mandates of like of lockdown or lock-in mandates where you can't work even in an environment where you know, or anything else. You like there were so many different policies that either could have been better or indirectly created certain things or directly created certain consequences or outcomes that were absolutely foreseen. But I mean, again, it's like and that's why, like, is government the best one to be doing it? They're the ones that currently do it, but are they the best ones? And that kind of goes back to the private school versus public school. If a private school is objectively better, why is the public school not more like a private school? And what separates a private school from a public school is the only thing is no affiliation to any religion or any particular religion, is the only thing that you're not under the regulations and restrictions of the Federal Department of Education. Like is the only thing that you can choose where you send your students in a private school system, but in a public school system, you're limited to a certain zone. Like, what is it that makes public schools objectively worse in every single metric recorded than private schools? And why has our public school system not turned into a private school system, or at least run like a private school system when a free market?
I wouldn't say private schools are better though, because I know I would say I wouldn't say like a handful, but like you know, say they have a graduating class of like 100.
Okay.
I know like at least 5 people that, you know, had mishaps, for instance, you know, whether it's with law or with the school or, you know, whatnot of, you know, whether, you know, I would say mishaps, and that reflects badly on the school. But that's still 5%, you know, and they still graduated, I'm sure, but like that's 95% of, you know, the school that has mishaps. You know, there are public schools in my county at least that, you know, have a 95% graduating class. You know, that's pretty similar, I would say. Now, I will say that.
But is graduating the only metric? Is it the best metric? Is GPA the best metric? Is it how much stuff is actually learned? The brand that you sell? I mean, you said the best colleges. Why are they the best colleges? Because they have a reputation for putting out better schools. And did you know that almost all of those started as a private institution? Like,
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah. And so why did they become public, and what made them worse or better when they became public? Or are they still private and exclusive, quote unquote? And it's like, why are they putting out the best? Well, maybe it's because, I mean, again, there might be a correlation there. They're the best schools because the parents that have money are the only ones able to put their students in the private schools, and those parents might be just more invested in the student school. So like, I mean, again, that's something that can certainly be debated, is like, but why would someone choose private school over public school if they're going to be double paying for their child's education, if it's not better for one reason or another?
That's why I wouldn't pay my kid to go to private school, because personally, I don't think it's better. Personally, I think that it stems from me and me itself. I think that, you know, if I want my kid to do decent in school, or at least I would say graduate or set them on a certain path. Now, you know, they will always have the option to do whatever they want. I will never disagree with that.
Except for go to a different school, it's not in their zone. So I just had to tie that back in. Sometimes options just aren't accessible.
Options might not be, accessible. But for example, my parents will say I'm not theirs once I graduate college. By by 2023 of May,
it's all you.
They don't give a shit what I do. I could be a trash man, and not saying that's a bad job, but I could have an IT degree and be a trash man for all they care. They gave me all of the possible tools to be successful in the world. They don't care if they gave me all the tools. What I do with them, they don't care. They just care that they gave them to me. And I am the same way. I'm going to tell my kid, you have to go to school every single day at 7:30 o'clock in the morning. I don't care what you say. You're going to school. As well as, do I care if I pay $1,000 for you to go to private school? No, if that's truly what you need. I don't think that's what you need. I'll pay a tutor $1,000 a year to tutor you if you need. But it's these public schools and private schools, I mean, I would have to really get in depth with it, to look at it to see, oh, what are the teachers actually teaching? I would have to be able to sit through the classrooms to actually tell the difference between the schools. But for the general public or the general knowledge, I don't think these schools really matter, because regardless, you're going to get some bad teachers, you're going to get some good teachers. All that matters is, if you're trying to go to college, you go to I wouldn't even say, I would say some high schools hold some merit over other schools, but not by a ton.
Or prioritize certain degree
some
paths
high schools or degree paths. Exactly.
Genres of education.
But I don't think it matters that much. If you have a 4.0, you're going to have a 4.0, and you're probably going to get accepted to the college you want to. If you have a 3.6 or a 3.5, or if you have a 3.6 compared to going to a different school that's higher prioritized and have a 3.5, you might get in if you have the 3.5, But at the
what
end
about
of the
a
day,
4.3 if you're taking AP classes, or if the school allows you to have a higher? What if some schools just can't reflect a better than a 4.0 student? And there may be some draw, exactly. And so there
might be some draw, but at the end of the day, you're going to do what you give in. And at the end of the day as well, your work ethic is going to tell who you are as a person. My internship, you would have never have told you could never have guessed my evaluation based on my GPA. My GPA is a 2.6 at best. My evaluation for the internship I worked at, he was forced to put 3 cons of me. He only put 2, and one of them was that I worked through my lunch break. And it's
therefore you had to get paid for your lunch. Darn.
I was getting paid through my lunch regardless if I worked or not.
Yeah.
I worked through it.
Yeah.
And it's
the work ethic.
It's the whole point of the work ethic. And it's some of these people might not know what work ethic really entails, or they might not have a great work ethic. And that's what really matters at the end of the day, is how much you give in, and that's how much you'll get back.
So I grew up in farm country. Not that my parents were on a farm, but my mom's parents had a farm. And so, we lived in town of no more than, say, 3,000 or 3,400 or something, moved to an even smaller town. But the point was, our school was 4A, which wasn't tiny, but it wasn't large. It was 150, 140 kids per class.
That's not bad
per grade. And so there was good opportunity, but there were more opportunities at other schools, say 5 or 6 days within 15 minutes or 30-minute drive or I mean 15 to 20-minute drive that say offered certain agriculture classes, certain business classes, certain computer classes, certain
And
I mean music classes, or even like what was the other one? Which was a big one. Oh, shoot. Like other languages. I mean, like our school was limited to one language, while other ones had, say, like Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, like ASL. And so there may be other reasons to send your child to another school. Maybe your school is limited to, say, like 32 or 35 class, like students per class, while another school only has like 12 or 17 students per class. And so you're going to get more one-on-one attention with the teachers just being at a smaller school. But I mean, but what are the trade-offs? Because you're at a smaller school, you have less funding, so you have less courses, that kind of thing. And so there may be reason to choose a bigger or a smaller school or a private school. But a lot of the time, private school is just not even an option for most families because there's no public funds allowed to go to private schools on a sole like association to religion basis, not any one particular religion, which the its law specifically says government shall make no law respecting any one religion. And so it's not like just respecting that people have a free exercise of religion. It's saying that we cannot discriminate in favor of or in like against any one particular religion. And so if those public funds were equally accessible or the opportunity was there regardless of the religious affiliation to any religion, then effectively if those state funds are being withheld on the sole basis that there's a religious affiliation, then that's violation of the First Amendment, which we just saw. I think it was Maine. Maine had a Supreme Court overturn something or other, like some denial of funds or whatever. So I mean, and there are charter schools that exist anyway, private schools that receive public funds based on certain like meeting of criteria or licensing or whatever or accreditation. And so that already exists, but for there to be demand in a free market for people to send their kids to or pay $9,000, $10,000 extra per year per student to send their kids to a certain school, there must be demand for that. And why would there be demand for that? If it was a worse school, they would just be paying for it. And so if there's the demand, what I'm saying is that let the public decide, let the parents decide, let the children decide, or well, in respect of the parents, like let the opportunity be there for parents who want to send their kids to a big school, a small school, a private school, a charter school, regardless, and have the opportunity be there, the equal opportunity of the $8,000 to $13,000 that's already being spent per student per public school, regardless of that student and like enrolls or not, the funds are there, and if they enrolled, they would be there. Award that to the families in the form of a voucher that the families can then redeem at an educational institution with some criteria necessary or not. Like that's the whole point, is just explore the opportunity of, would it be worse under a private system if the funds went to this? And you're like, well, I don't want, my tax dollars to go fund that child going to that school, but you have money for your child to send them to any school, maybe a school that you choose that their parent doesn't want the money going to, that they're paying into taxes, but everyone's benefiting the same and everyone has more opportunity and more choice. And so it would effectively be all the money would funnel down into the institutions, the educational institutions that have the most demand, that create the best product in like the highest quality for the lowest price. Maybe it's an incentive, maybe there's some other opportunities or free tutoring or emphasis in a STEM field or whatever it may be, or a club. Like, I mean, some marketable reason why a school might like market to parents to have them redeem their vouchers through that one institution. And then the ones that are more successful grow and the ones that are less successful get worse. And so you're saying you would choose a public school. That's totally fine. You'd be able to do that. If I wanted to choose a private school for my student, I would be able to do that. But under the current system, I'm not. And so I might want to send my child to, say, a bigger school for this one reason, like, say, a language or more sports opportunities. They had a lacrosse team. They had like something else that our school didn't have. I can't do that because of where where I live. Like, so all of those things.
I feel like that becomes a problem though.
At what point? or what would become a
Because
problem?
so like for instance, say like some school has, the extra languages and the extra correct or like the, really good sports team or
Yeah,
sports team, etc.
yeah.
You know, all of the parents are going to want their kid in that school, correct? I would say, like, say
Okay, so there'd be
they're
more
offering,
funding, yeah, and they'd
there would
expand.
be more funding.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then the funding just goes up because there's more of a demand for it. And then
What do you mean
people
the
aren't,
funding goes up?
or I mean,
Like,
the
the
tuition
cost?
goes up. The
The
tuition
cost.
goes up. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
So like, it starts out at 1,000.
yeah,
Well, we're having an excess amount of students at the school.
yes.
Instead of 20 kids per
Yeah.
class, we're having to do 30 kids per
Yeah,
class.
and that will inevitably result in a lower amount of sales. I mean, sales can consider one voucher a sale of a market. You market to a consumer, they consume your
Mhm.
product, which is your product is education. There would be less sales. If you increase the price on something, there's less demand for it. And so if
Mhm.
you're like, and so maybe it's finding the balance, and a good entrepreneur or CEO or business executive of a school who wanted to purchase and invest in a school would then have to weigh that. Is it worth it to charge more to optimize whatever, or to be able to add certain programs, knowing there will be an inevitable decrease in enrollment? Or will that
And
then
then
lead
those
to even
parents
more
get
people?
upset
Yeah,
and then they go to a lesser school because they can't afford it. And then
but they would
it's
still
a
have
whole
more
trick.
opportunity than they do now, even if things get
Will
worse or
they
more
though?
expensive. Well, absolutely, because right now there's no opportunity for many families to even have that even as an option. So yes, if they increase prices because there's more demand for it, then it would still be a subsidization of that product, which is education. And shouldn't education be something that we subject to the free market, because of free market and competition increases quality and decreases price? Like
But the
just in
whole point
general.
of competition would be like, the whole point of this is like, we're trying to, I wouldn't say trying to get rid of private schools, but the whole point of private schools is because of competition,
Because
is
of a
because
lack of something that
I
that
wouldn't
the
say
public
there's,
system lacks.
I wouldn't say the public system lacks because, for instance, say it's all open market, right?
Okay.
If the private schools are that much better, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're, let's just assume the private schools are that much better, right?
Okay.
Then every parent's going to want to get in the private schools. And then it just
Yeah.
slowly trickles down because you can't afford to get into those schools. And
But
then
then
it's
if you can't afford to
basically
get into
where,
those schools, then there will be a new opportunity that a new business owner or CEO or entrepreneur would want to start a new school, because there's a ton of demand, or they would just have the amount of funding that they would expand. And that's the thing, is that if you subject it to competition and anyone can build a school anywhere, the second that your product becomes too expensive, you will choose a more affordable option of relatively the same quality. And so say
yeah,
that there's one school that way overprices it, then
yeah.
you just create a new gas station, I'm sorry, school, that competes with the price and then brings the price down for the other school. And so,
That's if we have unlimited options of opening schools up.
and you will, because banks will still find people to loan to, because entrepreneurs exist and want to start new businesses. And so say construct this in this area and then prove it, like say with venture capitalists, that there's demand for this one particular thing, and we're going to specialize in this one particular thing. I mean, it would just be like
So
starting a
you're
business.
basically, you're basically saying have zero government funding and just have entrepreneurs start up
No,
schools.
there would still be government funding, because education is something that should be incentivized in culture in general. It should be something that we should prioritize funding toward, because it matters. And so like say law and order, so like police departments or fire
Mhm.
departments, or like there are certain things that exist as public funding, say like transportation
Yeah.
or roads, bridges, infrastructure, like all of that exists, military, all of that exists because it has to, and because it's good, and because we prioritize it, that public funds need to go to these things in these areas. And so I'm not saying withdraw all public funds, because then of course you're going to have people that just can't afford any education. I'm
Mhm.
saying that it should be, say, like money it won't be any increase in cost to government, to just say money can now go here. it would only create more opportunity for people to say where their money goes. Therefore, they can input their value systems or whatever their choice into the system, and then the system can be better for it. And if it gets worse for it, then there's opportunity for other people to come in at a lower price and provide maybe the same quality education. Or for those businesses that say, like those private schools that only have 100 kids enrolled, that if they have a good curriculum, just no one can afford to go, then they will expand if there's more public funding there. And so they might be able to take on more students. And so like it, even in a private system, it doesn't seem like it would get worse than what we already have. And there would be no increased cost to governments because the money's already there, just only going to public schools that are failing. I mean, can you at least acknowledge that public schools, to a certain degree, some public schools are failing, or even as a system?
No, I
Okay.
agree with that.
Okay.
But what are I'm getting lost with the whole entrepreneurs opening up schools, because I understand the whole public schools get their fundings, right? So the public schools stay the same.
Yes.
But if entrepreneurs want to open up schools, those will be private schools, because unless you want entrepreneurs to not get any revenue back, because the whole point of entrepreneurship is to get your money back, I would hope, at least, because that's how entrepreneurs
creates
make
a
their
profit
money.
incentive. Yes,
it creeps the
and a profit incentive can be very motivating to create a very high quality product for a very competitive price.
100%.
And so maybe that will produce a better outcome of education if there is profit incentive, like instead of a no profit incentive. And then if you say that I'm a teacher who needs to make more or needs to make less, well, if you make less, go to the public education system because they'll pay you at least this much. They'll give you this much time off, whatever. But here at our private school, we pay you more, but you have to work more hours. You have to be invested in the students. You have to be involved in these clubs, organizations. You have to be chaperoning at these events. I mean, and that's the thing is that when there's no restrictions or regulations from federal government, one size fits all policies for the entire nation, then you open up a world of opportunities for people wanting to take a risk because there's unmet demand. I mean, and the unmet demand is exactly why, say, an entrepreneur might want to open a school in an area, because people have been saying that I want a cheaper option, but this is the only option in the area and it's too expensive. Okay, well, how about you do exactly what they're doing? Because you won't be able to, it will discourage a monopoly on education effectively, or the monopoly will be the best product. And so of course, you could still have anti-monopoly laws that then you can't have one school go out and buy other campuses or satellite campuses unless there's demand for that. But the point is that the consumer demand would prioritize the best quality for the lower price through competition and through opportunity. There would be more opportunity and it would be better outcome in terms of the quality of education that as a whole we would receive and our children would receive.
So you're saying basically more entrepreneurs should open up private schools to force the competition?
Well, they can't do it now because there's no demand. There's only a certain amount of people that can even afford to send their children to private school. So it might not be worth it to build a $17 million complex of a school if there's going to be a super high risk because you're only going to have 75 kids enroll per year.
That's kind of my whole point, is because like an entrepreneur is not going to open up school if they're going to get such little profit. Now, if you
but they might if there's money allocated to parents that they can choose to put their kids in that institution, and they're marketing something that's not.
You're saying the government should give parents more money to allocate towards school?
I'm saying that currently the public school system works in that enrollment based, this amount of money per state, per county, whatever, this $8,000 to $13,000 is already being paid per child enrolled in public school. That same exact money would, instead of being given directly to the public school, be given in form of a voucher, not cash or money, to the parents, that the parents can then redeem through a school, and then the school can then go ascertain those funds from the government that already exist. So there would be no extra burden on the government whatsoever. And actually there would be less money outgoing. Well, maybe because there would be less public teachers, less public employees or whatever, and that there may be more like better benefits, better pay, something available through an entrepreneur in a private school or institution.
My whole thing with that is
it would be a decrease in funds. Sorry, like I'll take that back. But it would be a net neutral cost on government and taxpayers. But the only thing that would be created would be more competition and more opportunity, which would inevitably lead to more or better prices and a higher quality.
So my stance on that would be like, say you are the lowest competition, say you are the least desirable school.
Yep.
Say it goes 10 years down the road.
Yep.
And you're still getting the same funding, or are you getting less funding because your school's not desirable?
The funding would come through enrollment. And so if you have less students enrolled, then you would have less funding. Objectively, yes, absolutely.
Then you would either A, have to close down and those kids either A, have to pay more or don't go to school, or B, you're not getting the same materials. Say you need a new smartboard or more.
If there's less demand for your product, you will be outrun as a business.
You will be outran as a business,
which is maybe a good thing.
It might be.
And again, you could still sell that business. If you are failing, you can say, okay, I know there's a ton of land, there's a ton of property here. You could even demolish the school, or you could repurpose the school under a new brand name with new teachers or with a new focus area. And it would just be like selling to a bigger company that offers a better product than you. And you already have the facility. So it's not like you wouldn't get your money back because the facility is already built. It would just be, here's a new satellite campus for our program because we offer a better product. And so
I just think entrepreneurs would abuse that though. Cause like, for example, you know, colleges, I personally think are incredibly overpriced than what they should be, as well as, for example, Apple. Apple. $1,300, $1,400 for a phone that probably can do, could be a lot less.
But well, and that's because
it's a name brand.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a name brand.
Well, Nike, Adidas. I mean, there's a ton of
Nike,
name brands.
Adidas. There's a ton
AT&T,
of name brands
Verizon.
that prioritize their name, and they can price their name like that because people will still buy their product, regardless if it's better or not.
Oh, true.
So you get to the point where there might be schools that are kind of like name brands, like the universities for themselves.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. There would be name brand schools that you know the product that you would get if you put your child in that school. And then there would be lesser known brand schools that would still be available that would maybe produce a lower quality product. But if there's demand for something else, then it would be subject to competition. Someone else could come in and have funds available, have immediate demand for their product, which you can't artificially create. You can't just say, I want more people to demand what I have, unless you change something about your business. You introduce a new product, you introduce a new marketing tactic, you do something different as a business. And so if you're saying that the worst quality schools will inevitably fail, I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, because we'll have a better outcome as in general, unless you're saying it's just going to be too unaffordable because it's going to drive up the price of education as a whole.
It could be possibly monopolized like that.
Well, and we already have anti-monopoly laws. I mean, you can't be so big. You can't have you can't isolate yourself. And so into no competition and things like that. But
for example, I mean, we have anti-monopoly laws, but have you ever seen anyone without a iPhone or an Android?
Oh, so in terms of there is competition for Apple and Apple Android keeps prices. If Apple was the only option for a smartphone, think of how high their prices would be.
Well, but there's only two real,
there's Windows Phone, Google Phone. I mean, there's a bunch. I was about to say
there's probably like 5 that I could I don't think you could walk down the street and you could ask like 100 people. You might get 5 different phones.
Well, in every think about like gas companies. There's 5 big gas companies. Think about phone companies. There's 5 big phone companies. Think about social media. There's 5, well, 4 or 5 big social medias. I mean, you don't really have other options per se. There are people trying to introduce new competition into that market. But in general, there are other options and other opportunities for other options.
But
I mean,
you
think
don't
about
think
like
school systems would be one of those? I mean, I feel like school systems would be a pretty big priority for a lot of people, to where there might only be like 3 to 5 that, and they would jack up the prices to where you might not be able to afford it, or you will get stuck at the lower tier if you can't afford it.
I
I
think
think it
people
would
are already stuck at the
monopolize.
lower tier. So
I can
again,
see that.
I don't think it would be worse. I think even the worst outcome in a privatized system would be the same or equivalent in some capacity to what we already have.
I can see
And
that.
there would be new laws if people are tired of the fed up with the unaffordable education costs. Either allocate more funding or more taxes to more funding, or create some law that puts a cap on tuition prices in certain areas. Or there's all kinds of things, but that's the point, is that there would be infinitely more opportunity and people would solve problems, because that's what the free market does. If there's demand for something that doesn't exist, someone sees profit incentive potential to make money in a certain area. And why should they not make a ton more money if they're actually providing a better education to 70 million of household children?
So what would be a better education though? So
That's
like
the question.
yeah, I
Wherever
mean
people put
that's,
their money would be the demand. Would the demand be in
but
tech?
how
Would
do
the
you,
demand be in science? Would the demand be in sports? Would the demand be in lower hours, like maybe only 20 hours, 4 hours a day?
yeah.
Or would it be no homework? I mean, like, there's a ton of different marketable things that a business could try, or a school could try, and then the next year, if it didn't work, or the next term, if it didn't work, you could try something different. But it would be the ones that couldn't keep up with demand and increase the quality of their product while still maintaining the same price or decreasing the price would fail. And I don't think it's a bad thing for the worst schools to fail, because then
Yeah.
inevitably either there's more opportunity for something better, or you're going to have all the people funneling into just a better product or a better education system as a whole. And so I
can see
don't think it
that.
would be worse than what we currently have, because currently it's like, I want to send my child to a better school. Well, what options do you have? Well, none. This is the only school I can send my child to unless I have $10,000 per student to send to a private school. You have
Yeah.
no options. You are subject to the school in your area. And if it's big, if it's small, if it has another language or not, if it has a sport that you want your child in or not, like, it doesn't matter. You are subject to one option. That's why people are pushing school choice. That's why people are pushing vouchers to be redeemed at educational institutions, regardless of private or public, because the demand will determine the best product. And inevitably, what people choose will be better than what we have now, because right now we have one option, and it's good or bad, or it doesn't matter, take it or leave it. For most people, for most
For
families,
most people, yeah.
all they have is one option.
Yeah.
So how can it be worse than what we have now? And again, I was the same in that I did not open up to the opportunity, to this idea immediately. I'm like, well, what about this? What about this? Well, this is how we've always done it, this and this and that. But
Well, I'm always open up to
the more I
change,
explored it,
but
the more it made sense in every capacity. And at least the worst that would happen is the same thing we have now. We have failing schools that people are forced to go to, and we're trying to just shovel a bunch of money into it to try to fix the system. And you just said the money does not make a better school per se. It's the passion for education. It's the lower class sizes. It's the one-on-one that you get with the students and the teachers, and it's the parents themselves. And so all of those things, and some things you can control, some things you can't control, some things no amount of government policy or legislation is going to change. And so again, it would still, the worst case scenario would be exactly what we have now. It would just change the name of public education. We just wouldn't have public education. We would have public funding for our education system as a whole, and you get to choose one of the 17 schools within 100 miles or within 40 miles or within 10 miles of your location. Yes, you might still have rural
So
areas. Say that there's only a population of, say, like 70 or 100 students or 100 families or whatever in
yeah.
any one rural area. You might only have one option, or again, in a private system, an entrepreneur could say, "Hey, I'll house your student." A boarding school. Like it would be a better education, not around the parents, but still with a good influence for maybe parents that might not feel adequate to provide their child with the best opportunities within their household, or maybe they're really struggling to feed 5 mouths, or maybe they're really whatever, but they can't afford to send their children to, say, a daycare or a boarding school because the funding just isn't there. But in that system, say we might result in less people desiring abortion because they won't feel so burdened by having to sustain a 7 or 10 family household, or even a 3 or whatever family household, because there are funds that can care for the child, provide opportunity for the child, that may, I wouldn't say replace, but supplement the parents' desire to raise or to have the outcome be a success for a child if they don't feel that they can currently offer that for a majority of the year there might be a place that receives public funding based on demand, an opportunity for those kids to still see success or to still get an education despite being in super remote areas. Like, or they'll pay for housing, they'll pay for travel, they'll pay for, like, they'll send a bus or a private jet. I mean, like we don't, or a bullet train. Like, I mean, the opportunities are really endless when you think about it. It's just might take a lot of money, but we have a lot of time to change the system.
Yeah, I just think the general population, right? A
Yeah,
lot of this is a lot of things are fueled by general population.
yeah. One size fits all, public policy, like
One size,
51%
yeah.
majority, like vote for this, therefore it's enacted into law, even if 49% of people are disenfranchised by it.
And I believe that the general population would disagree with this due to the fact that, say, they can't afford to send their child to, say, school one. Well,
Yeah,
why can't I send my child to school one? Why do I have to send them to school two? And this family can send them to school one.
yeah,
And again, it comes back to the life choices of the parents, or et cetera, or whatever happens.
yeah.
But then it's like, well, why do I need this amount of money to send them to school one? You can tell them that, well, because it offers this, this, and this, like it offers better teachers, offers more classes, etc.
Yeah,
Well, they're
but
not
if
going to
they
be
can't
happy
afford
with
it.
that.
Oh,
They're
okay, yeah,
not going to be able to afford it, and they're also not going to be happy with that because they're going to be like, well, why can't I afford it?
yeah.
And it's just going to be, again, a whole trickle down system of the
Better education for
lower.
some and worse education for others,
Yeah,
which
which is,
would
again,
still be
we
better than
have
what we
that.
have now.
I wouldn't say it would be better. I would say
Okay, okay,
it's slightly the same or the
yeah,
same. I mean, because again,
yeah,
I personally don't think that private schools have better education than some of the private schools. It might be, you might have to have slightly better housing, but at the same time, like, I was, for example, my county
yeah,
where I went to middle school was, a very preppy, you know, actually incredibly preppy middle school and very good area.
yeah.
Where I went to high school was, their middle school was a Title One school where it was very low funding. You
Yeah.
know,
And was
it's,
your experience different between those two schools?
I would say yes, but not the same. Um, I would say it was slightly different, but I wouldn't say I got a better education from one or the other.
Okay.
I would
Okay.
say I was able to, take my AP classes like I wanted to. I would say I
Mhm.
was still in the accelerated math courses. I would say
Yeah.
I still went to the same gym classes. I got funding for sports,
Yeah.
etc. I mean,
Could you take Swahili?
Swahili.
Could you put your child in lacrosse? Could you like? I
Yeah,
mean,
I
okay.
could put my child in. I couldn't do Swahili, but
Yeah.
if I
Could you?
wanted to take French or Latin
Yeah.
or Spanish, I could. If I wanted to take AP Environmental Science or AP World History, I could. If I
Yeah.
wanted to play football, golf, lacrosse, swimming, I
Yeah.
could do all of that.
But it was limited to two schools options, and whatever is available at those two schools, you just kind of pick the best. Well, it might still have the same, might still offer the same, but there were still some things it didn't offer. Was
I
there
guess
anything it didn't
Swahili.
offer? Well, okay.
I mean,
Okay, did it offer Rosetta Stone?
No, it did
Could
not.
could
I
your
would.
could I mean a school
Yeah, I see your.
offer
I
Rosetta
see your
Stone,
point,
any
but
language on any software, and then because there's demand for it, maybe there's 10 students in a class and they're all learning a different language. That can happen at a private school, that while it maybe can't at a public school. I mean, like, the opportunities are endless. If there's demand for it, a private school could meet that demand, and a good entrepreneur would find a way to meet that demand for a cost affordable price. And if they couldn't meet a demand, at least it would be an option that would be available for some that doesn't exist
And
now.
I feel like public schools, though, are taking this course of action because, for example, I had junior and senior privilege to where I didn't have to take 7 periods. I only had
Yeah.
to take 6 because that's the credits I was
Yeah.
required to graduate high school. So
And
I
you had a
left
better
early.
education for taking one less class per day?
What do you mean?
I mean,
I probably had
yeah.
a worse. I'll get to that in a second.
I'm sorry.
I mean,
I did the same thing. I
I
took like a teacher aid or early release or something, but it's like,
yeah.
is that producing a better education, or is that just encouraging laziness and saying, well, I've better fill the time with something? But it was not structured, and it was maybe encouraging more opportunity for something else. I mean, maybe you had a job like during that
I
early
left
release.
at 1:50 and I just chilled at home. But for example, they've gotten rid of that.
Yeah.
They've gotten rid of junior privilege and they're getting rid of senior privilege, I believe, next year. So they're trying to expand that.
Based on
there's an
public
engineering
based on public demand. It takes a ton of
I guess.
time because you have to pass legislation, because you have to gain funding, because like in a private system that could still happen, but it would happen faster. In a public system, things take forever.
And I believe it's not taking a ton of time. I believe it's taking a year tops.
Okay,
like
relatively
it would
more
just
time
be
than...
it would take relatively more time. Yeah. I mean, because if you're a private school and you can just change it however you please.
You could just
probably
change it. A student comes in and a parent says, hey, do you offer this? No, but we can. Talk to us next week. Or, let me do some research on that. Hello, Mrs. Smith. I did find something that we would be able to offer your student. Like, is this option good enough for you? Or, well, it might only be this much more, but I'd love to offer that for you. I mean, like, again, they would find a way to meet demand. And if there's demand for it, whether it would cost more or not, that regardless, it would be an opportunity, or that would be an available to.
But this goes back to my whole point of
Yeah.
like the public schools of teaching. I would say unnecessary. Actually, I will say teaching unnecessary classes.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Unnecessary classes. A private system would not have to do that.
Like, I wouldn't even say like the public schools need to do that. Like,
Exactly.
for example, like the demand for AP Environmental Science was incredibly high.
Yeah.
Do you want to know why? Because it was a incredibly easy A.
Yeah. Yep.
And an AP class to look good on your resume.
Yeah.
But, is that, better than a finance class?
Yeah.
Who,
exactly.
you can take a finance class.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It doesn't matter if you're going to college or not.
Yep. Budgeting, business, finance. You need to
know budgeting.
Taxes. I mean, like, what if a private institution had a mandatory class on learning the tax system? Or
technology.
Yeah.
You can learn, technology is always growing. You can learn everything about technology. And it doesn't even have to be in-depth technology, just technology in general, how to use this, how to use that.
Yep.
You know, finance again. There was a engineering class that we had. You had to go off campus. You had to go to a different high school to
Yeah.
take it.
Yeah.
But there was that.
Yeah.
You know, there was no welding class for us.
Yeah. And do you wish
But
that your child, well, I mean, if you lived in the same
if it
area,
was there, no,
did you,
I wouldn't have taken a welding class because
yeah, but
personally that doesn't
someone
pique
might
my
want
interest.
to.
But a lot of
Yeah.
people might want to take a welding
Yeah.
class.
And in a
You
public
know,
school, you have to make choices of what to prioritize. And in
yeah.
a private school, I mean, of course, you'd have to make those choices as well, but you would be able to be more flexible and say, oh, this year or this term, we have funding for this, and there's demand for this. Therefore, maybe we'll take out one opportunity for this one class, put in this opportunity. It'll still be available the next 2 terms, just not this term. We're going to try something else and see how it goes over in the public eye. Like,
Yeah.
It would still be better because currently there's things that don't exist at public schools, or the public schools can't introduce, or it would take too long, or, well, they need more funding. Like, but you could get more funding if you're a private school, because you would say, hey, bank, I need a $10,000 higher loan or a $50,000 higher loan to build a computer lab, or at least repurpose one room into a computer lab and hire a staff member to, teach this extra set of courses that there's demand for. And so you could still get funding, and just having that program might bring in more funds, because more enrollment, because you have extra opportunities that some don't. And so that's the point, is that the opportunity is there. Infinite opportunity is there. And it really expands your perspective to say, oh, well, my school just didn't have this language, or my school just didn't have welding, or my school just didn't have swimming or men's soccer, or whatever it is, because Western Oregon didn't have men's soccer. They had women's soccer and they had rugby and some other things, but they didn't have, like, and I played soccer for many years. So it's like, oh, well, now I guess I can't do soccer, but they had intramural volleyball. Anyway. So, like, it would just be exactly what the public wanted and demanded, with no extra burden on, or no extra burden, or no necessary there would not have to be an extra burden on government and taxpayers to introduce new options into the education system.
So would you say that
in a profit incentive driven environment?
For example, would you say that these options are available at universities though? Because
but why do I
get
have
into
to
the
be
whole
19
argument.
to send my student to a school that will raise them to be to start a good business? Like, why is business management, business finances, business, like all of these things exclusively criminal justice? Why is criminal justice exclusively a 18 or 19-year-old thing? Like, again, like Elon Musk is actually doing this exact same thing. He's early testing. He started a new school, or funding a new school, where early testing of aptitude for students and exposing them to as much stuff as early as possible, so that they can have a direction in where they're good, where they test into, or whatever. And then they're exposed to really high level stuff really early ages, which is an amazing thing, because kids are very adaptable. They think outside the box, and they're very creative and explorative. And so they are now being exposed to super high level stuff at super young ages, and unlocking what, say, 18 to 22-year-old may not have the same opportunity to unlock. Maybe they're learning new languages, which is really difficult to learn when you're in college, because your brain is well developed than when you're still very moldable. And so, like, if you're saying that these things exclusively already exist in the university system, why don't they exist at a lower level? They could. If someone was interested in it and there was demand for it, why not start teaching budgeting? Why not start teaching personal finance? Why not start teaching business? Why not start teaching law? Why not start teaching like all of these things at lower tiers? It may be in a very diluted environment, or economics, or anything else, history. Like, but the demand will determine the product.
Yeah.
Right now, we don't have demand determining the product, and if we do, it's at best only 51%, or at I guess worst 51%, and 49% of the people not heard. And we're dependent on taking a super long time and passing public opinion to have more financing, going to these things. They don't have the same opportunity to get loans and then pay back the loans because there's no profit incentive per se that might be able to pay back these loans. Like, I mean, again, it wouldn't be, how would it be worse than what we already have? If not the same, like any problem that would exist in a private system is currently present in our public system. Any detriment that someone could say, well, yeah, but then this would happen. Like there might be no school within 100 miles. Well, yes, but that already happens in the public school system. And again, there might be an entrepreneur that offers, say, credits or awards or whatever, or transportation or housing or something for students in remote areas, or maybe just remote teaching, which we already have, that someone could attend, say, like University of Phoenix-esque, like similar thing anywhere in the world, and they could go to school at an institution in a different country. I mean, like, I'm not advocating necessarily or for or against like public funds being used to go to businesses in a global market, but we're turning into a global market. We have money going out for better stuff, and we have money coming in for better stuff that we have. And so if there's a business that offers, say, like whatever, Apple, Facebook, anything else that's, say, collecting their money is coming into the US for these things. Well, money is also going out of the US for all these other businesses. And we're morphing into a global economy very quickly. Amazon, I can get on Amazon and buy anything from anywhere at any time, and they just apply the restrictions of, you know, you have to have this like license, you have to have this, you know, you have to live in this country, they charge the taxes of your zip code, whatever. Why can we not do something similar with schools, and even just for 1 year expose someone to a school in, say, Germany? Like right now in the public school system, you can have a transfer student or a foreign exchange student, but there's certain limitations on that. We wouldn't necessarily have to have that if the public education system allowed, you know, or a private business, you know, would, say, take the money, but then give their own money to, you know, to this other contractor, basically, that would take on a student for, say, a single course. Or, I mean, like, the opportunities would be infinitely more than what we have now, and at worst the same. So, I mean, that's just one area anyway, but it's now been like, say, 2.5 hours that we've been recording. So I don't want to keep you on longer. I'm totally fine to keep talking longer, and I can split it up into a couple episodes if you want, but I want to respect your time. So no, I said it would only be 2.5 hours. So
that's fine. It's 1:30 for me. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's about it for me. I mean, I would say that's about it. I mean, I would just change those classes that are pretty much taught, and, you know, again, I agree with the demand of certain schools and the classes are being taught. And if you want your kid to go there, you have to pay something, whether that's where you live or whatnot. I would, again, disagree somewhat with the whole
purely private
and the families getting a certain amount of money, whatever that is, to
a voucher.
Send
it wouldn't be cash to them that they could spend on drugs, like, or cigarettes. It would be
a
redeemed
voucher to schools, because again, I still believe you get the same system that we have now. But that's about it for me.
And public school, I mean, I do have to add this caveat. Public school could still be what the public chooses. It wouldn't change anything about the system unless there was less enrollment at public schools, meaning that there's demand for something else, meaning that maybe later on, public schools may be something of the past, or in certain states or in certain counties or whatever might be something of the past. but then again, if there's a county or a state or something that needs a public school, they can just build a public school. It's what we've already done. It's like, oh, we need a school in this area to house these students that, or don't have opportunity, or we're expanding faster than we know what to do with, because there's all these other housing developments and there's a ton of people now moving in. And so like there would still be public school.
Yeah.
And there would still, the schools that are public would still stay public, but they may lose funding because there's now competition. And competition is actually often a good thing, because it is better for the consumer in that it creates a higher quality and drives down prices. If there's competition, if there's something else that was exactly the same Apple product, but half the price, would you go with it? Exactly the same Apple product, but maybe under a Pear brand. Of course, copyright infringement, patent infringement, whatever. But like the point is that it's not exactly, but there are cheaper options.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's always cheaper
even Apple
options.
Apple itself has $600, $700, $800, $1,400. Like it has different tiers based on, so people can still get the product. It's just at the price they can afford. And if they can afford to pay more for certain luxuries or non-necessities, they can choose to do that. And so even in a monopoly, which I'm not advocating for monopolies, I'm saying that you can still meet a price point. Maybe families that have more money want to put their students enroll them in more classes.
They would just pay for their class. I mean, I feel like that's just the whole university policy, because you pay for your classes that you take, and that's just the whole university policy. I feel like you're trying. I feel like the way that goes is towards, like, I understand you get funding for your school at like a high school or middle school or whatever grade level you want to go to. And it just turns into a university at that point.
And that's bad.
And I wouldn't say it's bad.
If you have higher education unlocked for fourth graders.
No, I wouldn't say it's terrible.
Exactly.
Like it's terrible.
Currently, you have to wait until after you've graduated to maybe get into a university. And you even said that at a university level, there's 2 years of unnecessary classes that you're taking the debt for.
But at the same point, then you're going to have a bunch of people possibly complain like, well, my kid's not getting this education because the whole point of our society as America is that it falls back to the greater kids, or the more capable. I wouldn't say more capable, but the people that have access to more shouldn't have access. The rich shouldn't have access to it.
They will.
Which
in any system, they will have more access. They'll have more access to travel. They'll have more access to move. They'll have more access to private schools. They'll have more access. Currently, they have way more access. And it's just unlocking some of what they have for Title I families. I mean, or families living within Title I districts. Like it would still be better than what we have now, because it would unlock some opportunities that are exclusively only available to, quote, rich families. Now it would unlock some, maybe not all, but some opportunities, more opportunities for more disadvantaged families and children.
Maybe.
I mean, like you could digest it.
You could argue that, again, the whole trickle down system would not allow them to offer that because the price goes up for the demand and whatnot. But
and then they would just go to the poorest schools, or the schools that only the poorest can afford, which would be exactly what we have now. Or they would only be limited to one opportunity, which is exactly what we have now in many areas. And so
that's why you have Title I funding, because those schools get
and
more
you could
funding,
still
more
offer
soul-based funding for those schools.
You could still offer maybe a higher, like a grant system that offers more funding to, like that, like, and that's the thing, is that it wouldn't, even just the simple changes that I was suggesting wouldn't put any more financial burden on the system. But if there is need in a community, if there is need in the system to be better, then we can always create more laws or allocate more funding towards certain things, away from certain things. I mean, like, we have crazy high budgets for all kinds of different areas, or maybe
Yeah.
crazy low budgets. And so like there could still be more funding, maybe incentivizing, like, but you just said that more money isn't going to make a better school. So what would
Possibly not
make
now.
the school better? Selling to a bigger brand?
Trial and error with teachers, because
Yeah.
there are so
Yeah.
many teachers that think they want to go into teaching and then don't give a shit afterwards. And
Yeah.
then
Exactly.
there's a whole bunch of things where, in my opinion, teachers get, I wouldn't call them stupid, but they lose
Failed
a
to keep
lot
up
of,
with the times. Yep.
fail to keep up with times slash
Yeah.
they're around kids too much,
Yeah.
and their brain pretty much devolves because I feel like they're around kids so much because they start thinking they know what, like, for example, I work with kids currently,
Mhm.
kind of, or I work in a school system now,
Okay.
and I've had a teacher tell me to do some miscellaneous task, and I quite literally almost told her, I was like, "Are you stupid?"
Mhm.
Because I had to organize Legos. I had to organize Legos
Organize
for
them.
the
Okay.
kids.
Oh, yeah.
And for me to organize Legos, it took me about a full week and a half worth of work to
Mhm.
organize the Legos. They probably could have just bought new robotics Legos and it would have saved them money probably.
Yeah, then the labor it took to pay you.
Than the labor that it took, as well as
Yeah.
the person's point of view of it was the kids are going to have so much fun and it's going to help them, you know, use these Legos, or it's going to,
Yeah. In a time sensitive environment,
in a,
maybe. Like if
but
you only have 40
like,
minutes and you can't find something, but that's why you're there because you know where everything is to a certain degree. You don't have to put them all in the same pile. You can say, like, hey, student, raise your hand if you need a wheel. So you go get a wheel because you have a bucket or whatever. You know where they are, or you can take it from this table and put it on that table. Like,
but like my whole
anyway, but
point
continue.
is
Sorry.
like
Yeah.
these robotics Legos, if you're a second grader, you're probably not completing the Lego in a 40-minute time period, like the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah.
And so you're just, in my opinion, you're just having fun making Legos.
Yeah.
Why do you need to complete the Lego set? Or, you can go up and grab it from the spare part bin if you really need that Lego piece.
Yeah.
Why are we spending time and money on a intern to organize these Legos?
Yeah.
There's no reason for it. And that's where
Yeah.
I fail to see some of these teachers' aspects of,
Yeah.
why are you doing it this way? Like, are you, and my whole thought process went back to, you're a 60-year-old. Do you
Mhm.
really know what's better for a kid than someone that was a kid about 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure I remember what it was
Yeah.
like to play with Legos. I didn't care what I was building. I was just building
Yeah.
stuff. As
People get
well as when
stuck
I was
in their
organizing, there are
yeah.
ways, yeah.
Yeah.
When I was organizing the Legos, I can guarantee you that I was pulling apart pieces that were not part of the, instructions because
Yeah.
they were just building stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the whole part of Legos, is to
Being
just build,
creative.
being
Yeah.
creative and building
Yeah.
random stuff.
Yeah. Same thing with crayons. I mean, like,
Yeah.
do you have to have exactly one of every single shade of every single color on every single child's desk? Or
Uh,
can you have a box of crayons or a tub of crayons and there's a bunch of different colors of crayons and a child says, I don't have a white. Can you say, oh, I do? And you trade,
Yeah.
or I don't have a purple. Okay, then I mean that encourages cooperation and speaking out, when you need something. And a lot of people have a lot of trouble asking for help or when they need something. But I mean that again beside the point. But like it doesn't sound necessary. And as we age, there are certainly things that come in to play with age that are just a reality of human life and age and
Hmm.
deterioration of the brain or body or thing and something else. And so that's certainly warranted. And at that time, like maybe are they still working because they don't have the funds to retire? Are they still working because they enjoy the job even if they're not good at the job? And so yeah, like I totally believe that the best people should be doing the job, and that everyone should strive to be their best and find a place where they can be the best. And so I might not be the best swimmer, but I might be the best computer programmer. Like I might not be the best, baker, but I might be the best exactly. And so but everyone can still be the best at something. You just have to find your knack, and you have to find people, surround yourself with people that can help you get there. And so it's really just a mindset and a choice of who you associate with, or who you as a parent choose for your child to associate with, which
You are
may
who
or may
you
not be the public
associate with.
system. So,
I
or
mean,
public education system.
The amount of times my parents told me that you are who you associate with, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you become your friends. You become your spouse. You become
your friends sometimes.
Yeah,
I will. I will say that much.
For better or worse,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you rub off on them too. Like if you're better, at morality or grounded or whatever, or not, then you influence them to be you as much as they influence you to be them. So, yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I think it's been more than enough to get a good episode out of.
I would hope so.
But no, or more than one. I mean, like
I mean, however you want to splice that, I don't really care.
Yeah. So anyway, I really appreciate your talking. I really appreciate your perspective. And I think that you added a lot to the conversation. I think you definitely mentioned some things that I didn't know about, and got me thinking about some things that I hadn't thought enough about, or that there's still more to learn. And so I really appreciate it. And I hope that you continue to think about it, that maybe viewers or listeners, that they can continue to engage in these discussions or topics, and that they can find some value in what was said. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree, and then maybe it just convinced you that there's more for you to research and learn in these topics. So anyway, thank you so much, Matt, for hanging out with me, and the viewers. If you like the episode, go ahead, drop a like, and subscribing is free. You can drop a follow on our Facebook page, FST Podcast. And go ahead, and Matt, where can, if the viewers or listeners want to hear more from you, maybe your perspective, or kind of see you in a day-to-day environment, how can they continue that conversation, or how can they support you in your efforts?
Hashtag PushxClimax. I know it's sexual. It was not meant to be sexual. Okay, I've gotten that a lot recently. I don't know why. Actually, I know why. I made it when I was in 8th grade. Okay.
I think a lot of our screen names are made in our early years.
No, but on a real note, twitch.tv/PushxClimax. I stream a lot. I play mainly League of Legends and Teamfight Tactics. If you don't know the games, they're incredibly toxic and addicting. Play at your own risk. I will say that.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Well, League especially. I don't know about TFT if it's as toxic.
TFT is not as toxic, but
it's like a chess. It's like a chess style game that gets you to think outside the box and coordinate different things. Anyway, but yeah, it's more of a mental game than a
physical,
do it as
or
fast
mechanical.
as possible. Yeah, mechanical. Yeah. Continue.
I'm also on TikTok at PushxClimax if you just want to see clips of what I do. That's about it. I don't really want to give out my personal Snapchat or Facebook or Instagram.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine. Like what's public is public. And actually, if you guys were wondering, he streamed this live on Twitch.
I did.
And so this is the first podcast that has been streamed live. So if it's a VOD there, then you can go and check it out and see the behind the scenes of the podcast. But I would really encourage you to go support him. He's a close friend, and so I appreciate you being here. And
I would encourage don't watch the previous broadcast. I would just go to the YouTube channel. Might as well just look at the edited version.
So I would say, is there any final thought that you'd like to leave with the viewers, or wrapping up a conversation, or something you didn't get to say, or how do you want viewers to remember you by? Something that's final words, Last words are so important.
Last words are so important. Shit.
You're not about to die, but like,
Nah, I'm not about to die. Yeah.
final breath.
Final breath.
What
I
to
had
say?
a great time doing this podcast. I would say that's about it. Yeah, I had fun doing the podcast.
Nice. I'd hope so.
School systems, fuck them. Fuck school systems. Change them real quick. Change them after I graduate so I can at least be happy with my life that they changed. Yeah, that's about it.
Hey, I'm a product of the public school system too, so maybe there's some light at the end of the tunnel, you know.
Hopefully.
If you create your own way. I mean, if you're just gonna do what everyone else does, then you're gonna get the results that everyone else gets. And if you want something that not everyone else has,
be
you
a
have to do
lemming
something.
be a lemming like me sometimes. It gets you somewhere at least, you know.
There's still hope for you.
There's still hope, yeah.
Oh, I was talking to viewers, but yeah, you too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's still hope for me too.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Matt. Anyway,
Yeah, of
have
course.
a wonderful rest of your week, guys, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.